to their bitter rivals.
Lying Ted Cruz. He does not like New York.
When Donald loses, he yells and screams and stamps his foot.
Who will win one of the most divisive delegate-rich contests yet? It's New York's choice. Tonight, in the Republican race,
It's a rigged, disgusting, dirty system.
Donald Trump blasting GOP rules for doling out delegates as a contested convention looks more likely than ever.
The RNC, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Donald, it ain't stealing when the voters vote against you.
Ted Cruz aggressively fighting for delegates, infuriating Trump, and frustrating John Kasich's bid to stay in the game.
Everybody's been talking about who wins what thing. It's about accumulating delegates.
In the Democratic race tonight,
It may be inconvenient, but it's always important to get the facts straight.
Hillary Clinton now in a no-holds-barred grudge match with Bernie Sanders. Their rising anger laid bare in their Brooklyn debate.
I do question her judgment.
President Obama trusted my judgment enough to ask me to be Secretary of State.
Now, it's time for voters to have their say.
I think New York values are at the core of American values.
The Empire State hasn't seen a presidential primary like this.
I love these people. These are my people.
New York is choosing, and the tension is soaring, with hundreds of crucial delegates up for grabs right now.
And you're looking at a live picture from Brooklyn, New York, where there has been high turnout, but the New York City mayor is calling for an investigation because tens of thousands of Democrats were purged from voter lists. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Anderson Cooper in the CNN Election Center with a special edition of AC 360. For the 2 Democrats and 3 Republicans in the presidential race, New York matters more than ever. Several of the candidates have a personal stake in the outcome tonight. Polls close across the state less than an hour from now, and that's when we'll have our first chance to actually project winners. For the Republicans, frontrunner Donald Trump heads into the night with a home state advantage. He, of course, counting on a big victory over Ted Cruz and John Kasich. Tonight, Trump has an important new opportunity to widen his lead in the delegate race as he fights to win the nomination outright or at a contested convention. There's a lot at stake with 95 GOP delegates up for grabs. New York Republicans award those delegates proportionally, but it's possible for the winner to take all if the victory is large enough and widespread across the state. For Democrats, Hillary Clinton hoping for a strong win against Bernie Sanders in the state where she lives and where he was born. But Sanders says he might pull off a New York surprise. As Clinton aims to lock up the nomination, these two have been going at each other like never before. Here's one reason why. A huge number, 247 delegates are on the line in New York. It is the second biggest prize of the primary season for Democrats. Both candidates expect to get a piece of that prize since the delegates will be split proportionally. Wolf?
Anderson, thank you. We have our correspondents. They are standing by at key locations, including the candidates' headquarters. Let's go to CNN's Jim Acosta covering Donald Trump. Big night for Donald Trump tonight. What do we know?
That's right, Wolf, and they want a Manhattan-sized landslide here in New York to reset the narrative of this campaign. I talked to a top official inside Donald Trump's delegate operation who said, yes, it is possible they will beat that 50% threshold needed in New York's congressional districts and statewide to pick up all 95 delegates. And Trump himself all but predicted he will top 50% at that event he held in Buffalo last night when he noted that Ted Cruz did not beat 50% in his home state of Texas. I asked campaign manager Corey Lewandowski about that, and he noted the exact percentage Cruz won in Texas. That is 43.8%. They want to beat that number badly. And the campaign, Wolf, I've talked to officials who say, yes, they still believe they can get to that magic number needed to clinch the nomination, 1,237 delegates. But in the event they fall short of that, they're starting to plan for this. They are starting to micro-target uncommitted delegates around the country, trying to learn who they are, what their concerns are, what their specific issues are, so they can start having sit-down meetings with those folks and start laying the groundwork to capture those delegates at a contested convention later on this summer. Wolf, just a little while ago, we heard them striking up Frank Sinatra's New York, New York. Donald Trump wants to start spreading the news of this victory he's looking forward to later on tonight, Wolf.
Yeah, we'll hear from him later tonight. Jim Acosta, thanks very much. Let's go to Brianna Keeler. She's over at Hillary Clinton campaign headquarters. What's the latest over there, Brianna?
Wolf, the Clinton campaign is expecting a big night tonight. They're also worried about the Sanders campaign recently raising questions about whether the Clinton campaign, how it raises funds jointly with the DNC, if that is something that breaks rules. The Clinton campaign says it's completely above board, but they're worried that these attacks are something that could hurt Hillary Clinton and the party in a general election. And not just worried, they're angry. One source close to the campaign told me many in the campaign were, quote, pissed about this. So look for many backers of Hillary Clinton to be calling for Bernie Sanders after tonight to look at the long game. As one said to me, quote, he has to find a way to land this plane so it doesn't crash and burn the party. So could tonight bring a miracle on the Hudson? Not quite. I don't think that's what the Clinton campaign is expecting, but they're certainly hoping that what's really been a testy primary of late will get toned down. Wolf?
I'm sure she's getting ready for her big speech tonight as well. Brianna, thanks very much. Let's stay in New York. Jake Tapper is on the scene for us as well. Jake?
Thanks, Wolf. Well, one of the things that we're going to be looking for right now, I'm joined here by Dana Bash, is how much the front runners are going to be able to really dominate, what the margins are going to be, because both Donald Trump on the Republican side and Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side are hoping that they can secure the magic number of delegates for each of their respective races so that they don't have a really messy convention fight. New York could be a big part of that for Donald Trump. If he gets more than 50% in all 27 of the congressional districts here, he will win all 95 Republican delegates, Dana.
That's right. I mean, that would be a huge feat, not only in the number of delegates, but also in the idea of momentum, kind of the feeling and the narrative of this. But you know, when it comes to Hillary Clinton, it has been remarkable to see the way she has campaigned all through the state in a way that we haven't seen since she ran for the Senate,
right,
10 years ago. And it does show not just how much she has to try to make sure that Bernie Sanders keeps his delegate numbers down, but how diverse this state is looking into the way this is going to play tonight, even within the Democratic Party.
No, that's right. And so both of the frontrunners, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, trying to fend off the momentum of Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz, who the two of them have won a lot of the most recent primaries, are trying to cast them aside and push them away so that the divisiveness and the contentiousness that exists right now in both the Democratic race and the Republican race stops and doesn't destroy their parties and their frontrunners' chances of winning in the fall, Anderson.
That is very true. A lot to watch for tonight as we count down to the end of voting in New York. What will it mean for the GOP race if Donald Trump is able to win all of the state's delegates? We are just getting started in this important primary night. Stay with us.
Only 48 minutes away from the top of the hour. That's when the polls close in New York State. You're looking at live pictures from inside Trump Tower right now. Donald Trump will be making his statement there. We'll, of course, have live coverage of that. In the meantime, I want to walk over to John King. He's over at the Magic Wall for us. The stakes for the Republicans are enormous tonight, especially for Donald Trump. He's anticipating a big win.
He's anticipating a big win. That would give him momentum back, Wolf. And the question is how big of a win when it comes to the 95 delegates at stake tonight, because Donald Trump is the only candidate who has a chance to clinch before the convention, and whether the odds of that will be dramatically impacted by what happens tonight. If you talk to Team Trump, they tell you they think the worst they will do tonight is 75 of the 95 delegates. So let's give them that in this scenario here. This is, they think, the worst case scenario. They think they can get all 95. But let's say Donald Trump gets 75 tonight. It means Cruz and Kasich pick up a few of the delegates in the congressional districts as we go through all 27 of those, 27 different races, if you will. Getting 75 would get Donald Trump out here to 833. It would also, they believe, put momentum back in his camp as the race stays up here next Tuesday in the New England states, in the Mid-Atlantic states. So let's assume a springboard out of New York, and then Donald Trump gets 75% of the delegates next Tuesday night, right? That gets him out to 930. That's a pretty good start. Momentum back in his camp, and he thinks at this point they think they could either get to 1237 or get close. But think of it this way now. We have 930 if Donald Trump gets 75 delegates out of New York tonight, 75% of the delegates next Tuesday. What if he gets them all? Add 20. That gets him to 950 if he gets all 95 tonight. And what if he does a little bit better in these states? Because Cruz and Kasich have not proven yet that they can perform in this part of the country. Take a look at the map. If Donald Trump conceivably could be at 960, 965 late this time next week, that's what the Trump campaign wants. They want to end April as close to 1,000 as they can get. In May and June, as we go on, 502 delegates left. You need to get to 1237. So the goal for the Trump campaign, a big night tonight, try to get all 95, as close to that number as possible, then match that percentage in the contest next week and push this number at least to 930. But, Wolf, they think conceivably by next Wednesday morning, a week from tomorrow, they could be in the 950, 960 range.
Yeah, that's possible. Let's see what happens tonight, though. First, Anderson, over to you.
Yeah, a lot of delegates at stake, Wolf. Let's talk with our panelists right here. David Axelrod, how likely do you think it is that Donald Trump could get all the delegates tonight or close to all the delegates tonight and actually get 1237 before convention?
Well, I think it could happen that he'll get all the delegates tonight, and that'll put him on track to get very, very close. Whether he gets over the line or not is the question, because I think it's absolutely essential for him to get those 1,237 delegates. If it goes to a second ballot when almost half the delegates are unbound, very unlikely that Donald Trump will win. So there's a sense of urgency, I'm sure, around his camp about doing as well as possible.
Does
tonight.
everyone on this side of the panel agree that if Donald Trump doesn't win in the first round, at a convention, that the chances are he would not actually win in a second round or a third round?
Yeah, I agree with that mindset. And I think that a large part of the reason is when you think about the composition of who are those delegates.
Right.
They are party regulars. In my state, it's such a strange process. A week from tonight in Pennsylvania, it's a blind process. Right. You don't even know for whom you're voting. But generally speaking, they're party regulars who have paid their dues, not to Donald Trump, not to Ted Cruz, and not to John Kasich, but to the GOP organization at a grassroots level. And what do they most want to do? They want to win. And so I think that on ballot 2 through however many it takes, it's to the detriment of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think, these are relationships that the Ted Cruz campaign has been building over months and months and months. And it's very hard to play catch up when you're actually building relationships. And so I think, if Trump doesn't win on the first ballot, Cruz wants the second ballot, and Kasich wants a third or a fourth or a fifth ballot to give him a shot at it. And the Trump people really acknowledge that. And that's why they're trying to get as close to 1237 as they can. The question that I have is, how close do you have to get? Right. There are 200 uncommitted delegates. Trump can clearly woo a lot of those people. So if he's within 50 or if he's within 100, we see in the exit polls that an overwhelming majority of Republicans believe that if you're in the lead, you ought to get it. So, I think the momentum would be on his side.
Yeah. And Donald Trump is making that argument over and over again, saying, listen, this is the will of the people. He will have certainly more voters. He'll have the most delegates. And that, listen, if the GOP tries to mess with that, it's just proof that the system is rigged. I think for Ted Cruz, his argument is essentially that, listen, he can organize. He's got this database, the data, and the sort of grassroots organizational strength that Donald Trump doesn't have. So that is his argument on that second ballot for the delegates. He also thinks that he might not have such a good night tonight or next Tuesday. He will not. No. But going forward, he could do well in some of those.
But the tough thing is, if you're 400 or 500 delegates behind, it's really tough to justify how you become the nominee and not the guy who's in front. And most of the polling of Republicans seems to support that point of view.
Right. Yeah. We are going to get a closer look in the first results in New York. We're getting closer to the first results. Will Bernie Sanders leave the state with an even narrower path to the nomination? More in this special AC 360 after the break.
Live pictures coming in from Hillary Clinton headquarters. She's going to be speaking later tonight. Clearly a very important night for her. Only 38 minutes left to vote in New York State. The polls close at the top of the hour. John King is with me over here. John, like the Republicans, a huge night for the Democrats as well. Very important.
And like the Republicans, you have momentum with one candidate, Bernie Sanders, coming into tonight, but the math in Hillary Clinton's favor, and she hopes with a victory in her adopted home state tonight to prove that the math is even more in her favor. Look, 229 is her lead right now by the CNN delegate count. The pledged delegate count only this is on the Democratic race. What Bernie Sanders needs tonight, Wolf, to keep it going and to change the math is an upset. If Bernie Sanders could win 55-45 and pick up 25 delegates, not only would he narrow that gap some, but the conversation certainly would change if Bernie Sanders could beat Hillary Clinton in her home state. But the expectation is, and Team Clinton thinks this, and most in the Sanders campaign concede, it'll go something like this. It'll go for Secretary Clinton. The question is by how much in those Democratic proportional rules. But let's assume Hillary Clinton comes out of New York tonight, 247 delegates at stake tonight. The rest of those are the super delegates. If Hillary Clinton comes out with a net gain of 25, A, she thinks she stopped Bernie Sanders' momentum. B, proven she can win her adopted home state. But C, most importantly for the Clinton campaign, Wolf, they believe then, as we get on to next Tuesday, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware, the Clinton campaign thinks it can springboard and maybe lose Rhode Island to Bernie Sanders. They think if they get a good win in New York tonight, they win the rest. Connecticut, a little bit more dicey. But if that happens, remember, in the CNN count, 229 is her lead right now in pledged delegates. They think by the time they get to the end of the month, she could be up in the 280 range, maybe even a little higher than that. At that point, at the Clinton campaign, you heard Brianna talking about this earlier, they think that it's time then for Senator Sanders to stay in the race as long as you want, but dial it back. So for Senator Sanders, he's in the race. He's not going anywhere. The question is, this is about demographics. In any big state where you have a diverse African-American community, Latino community, Hillary Clinton in the bigger states has proven she wins those states. If Bernie Sanders, the only way to mathematically say I'm competitive in this race is to not have the map look like this late next Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And to do that, he has to change these states by somehow turning around his performance with African-Americans and Latinos. But the Clinton campaign thinks this is how we're going to end tonight in New York, and they think that carries over to next week. And they think at that point the math just becomes insurmountable for Senator Sanders. We'll see.
These are just pledged delegates. Right. We're not even talking about super delegates right now.
You add them in, it brings it. She has 487 right now, but let's leave them off for now because they don't vote till the convention. But they still think that gets pretty convincing if the Clinton campaign can deliver.
Anderson, over to you.
Well, thanks very much. David, if the math does become insurmountable for Bernie Sanders, does the tenor of the race between him and Secretary Clinton change? Obviously, he stays in it all through the convention. No reason not to. He's got the money. He's got the support. But does the kind of the vitriol that we saw at this last debate, does it change?
I think that's one of the very big questions coming out of tonight. I really do think the math is getting inexorable. You know, this is a closed primary. You heard Bernie Sanders say earlier, closed primaries are hard for him. Well, 4 out of the next 5 next week. There are 5. 4 of them are closed primaries. Right. He's not going to gain next week, and time is running out. So the question is, at what point do you say, you know what, I'm going to keep running, but I don't want to do anything that's going to damage the nominee's chance. And on the other side, does the Clinton campaign, which seems to me too eager to engage with Sanders, do they back off and say, and start behaving in a way that kind of gives him his due, embraces some of his issues, and really focuses on the Republicans?
But you know, every time she tries to pivot to Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders gets under her skin. And we saw this at our debate. Bernie Sanders gets under her skin. He kind of attacks her, whether it's on Wall Street or her speeches or whatever it is. And she sort of feels the need to kind of fire back and defend herself.
But that's the big challenge here. I mean, if she's going to be the nominee, then she has to kind of suck it up and move on.
But she's tried, right? And she's tried, and she pivots to Trump, and then she gets turned back in.
A lot more to talk about. There's a lot of anticipation within the campaigns as we all wait to learn the winners out of New York State. We are getting new clues about the outcome from our exit polls. All of that ahead.
There's not much time left for voters to cast their ballots in New York, only about half an hour. Right now, we're following a controversy, though, involving more than 100,000 Democrats who were purged from voter lists. The New York Mayor, Bill de Blasio, calling for an investigation. Let's go to CNN's Bryn Gingras. She's over at a polling place in Brooklyn. What are you learning, Bryn?
Well, Wolf, what the Board of Elections is saying, this is a maintenance purge. It did it over a 6-month period, and that's how it gathered the 126,000 voters that you're talking about. A majority of them, 70,000 Democratic voters, they basically were part of that purge because they didn't vote in past 2 federal elections, and then they didn't return the cancellation notice that was sent to them. 44,000 of those voters, well, their mail bounced back to the Board of Elections, and that's how they landed up on that purge list. What's happening today is people are coming here to polling places like the one you're seeing behind me, and they're trying to vote, and they're not on the list, and they're instead being handed an affidavit ballot. You can imagine how furious this is making some Democratic voters, especially here in Brooklyn. So you know what? They took it right to the federal court, and they tried to immediately restore their right to vote, filing a temporary restraining order. And late this afternoon, a federal judge denied that request. Well, also furious, as you mentioned, Wolf, the New York City Mayor, Bill de Blasio, he says he's going to investigate, and the Board of Elections says it will cooperate with that investigation.
All right, Bryn, thanks very much. We'll stay on top of this controversy. In the meantime, let's go back to Jake and Dana.
Thanks, Wolf. One of the things that we're looking for in this very, very contentious race on the Republican side and the increasingly contentious race on the Democratic side is what effect is this having on the Democrats and Republicans who are voting out there. Let's bring in CNN Politics Executive Editor Mark Preston, who has some exit polls that should shed some light on this. Mark.
Well, Jake, certainly a tale much different from what we're seeing on the Republican side than we're seeing on the Democratic side. Republicans very pessimistic about how this primary is going. Let's take a look at these numbers right here. Has a Republican campaign mostly divided the party? 57% of New York Republicans believe that this fight between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump has been very divisive for the GOP brand. But on the other side, Democrats have a different view. Look at this. The fight between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders is seen in a positive light. 68% believe that it has energized the party, while only 27% of New York Democrats believe it has divided the party. So while we are seeing this infighting right now between the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Bernie Sanders campaign at this stage of the campaign, we are seeing the voters, though, on the Democratic side, see it as a plus. Jake?
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. I wonder how much of that is a result of the fact that the two frontrunners are Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. So Clinton supporters taking a more optimistic view because they're confident that Hillary Clinton will do well here, maybe likely get the nomination. Trump supporters perhaps very upset at how much the party seems allied against their man.
Yeah, and look, I know the Clinton people would probably beg to differ, but this has not been a horrible process for Hillary Clinton. They have had a lot of substantive discussions, and she has become a more seasoned campaigner. She's kind of gotten the rust off. On the Republican side, can you believe it's only 57% who think that it's divided the Republican Party? I mean, we're 3 months away from the convention, and the party chair and the frontrunner are going at it almost daily in a public way.
Yeah.
I mean, can you remember a time when that has happened?
And well, and one of the other issues, I think, of course, is that if you're a Trump supporter, you feel as though the party is against you, and that people, and there's a conspiracy afoot to deprive your man of the nomination, and Donald Trump is certainly among those Trump supporters who feels that way.
There's no question, and he's continuing to stoke that because he believes it only helps him. Although I do have to say that there are a lot of Republicans who I've been speaking to who say that who like Donald Trump, they're a bit concerned that maybe he's doing a little bit too far because he does need a lot of those delegates that he's kind of brushing off and saying that they're rigging the system.
Absolutely, and we have something special for viewers this evening. Tonight, the winners of the New York primary will have their victories displayed on one of the world's most famous landmarks. That, of course, would be the Empire State Building. Right now, you can see the tower is red, white, and blue, a patriotic display. Once CNN projects winners, the lights will change to correspond to the colors that CNN is using to represent each candidate. So take a look at this. If Hillary Clinton wins the Democratic primary, the tower will turn dark blue, as you see right there. If Bernie Sanders wins, the tower will shine in a lighter shade of blue. Same dynamic for the Republicans. This is what a Donald Trump victory would look like, with the top of the Empire State Building illuminated in a dark red, a crimson. Ted Cruz would get a coral color. The lights will look like this if he pulls off a New York primary win. And if John Kasich wins New York, those famous tower lights will turn purple. Whatever the outcome this evening, New Yorkers will be able to look up and see the results. Of course, the rest of the nation can see it right here on CNN. Anderson?
Cool. Jake, Dana, thanks very much. The voting is winding down in New York. We could learn one or both winners very soon. We expect to hear from Donald Trump live in the next hour. Much more of our election coverage after this. And welcome back to our continuing coverage of the New York primary. You are looking at live shots over at Clinton headquarters and Donald Trump headquarters. We anticipate hearing from Donald Trump in the 9 o'clock hour. Should also point out polls close in just about 20 minutes from now. It'll be interesting to see how quickly we're able to make a projection. Again, polls close 20 minutes. That's when the voting stops in the state of New York. A lot to watch for at the top of the hour. Let's continue with our panel. Paul Begala, what do you think we're going to learn by the end of tonight in terms of the Democratic race, but also the Republican race?
Well, the Republicans, I think, have a lot more at stake because Donald Trump can make a serious step toward getting 1,237 delegates before the convention.
You think that's still very possible for him to get?
Possible, yes, and it's likely, but he's got to really dominate tonight. I hate to set the bar too high for him. I mean, I think he's run a terrific campaign in New York. He seems to have righted the ship, brought in a lot of establishment folks to help run his campaign. But if he can win every single congressional district, which is hard to do, with over 50, and statewide, then he kept every single delegate out of New York. Man, that's a quantum leap forward for him. For my party, everything is proportional. We're the party of participation trophies. Okay, so like if Billy was breathing during the season, we give him a trophy. So there's no knockout blows in the Democratic Party. And, Hillary begins with a commanding lead. She'll go to bed tonight with a commanding lead. And, we'll move on to Pennsylvania.
Ben?
Well, tonight, I think you're going to see, is it possible for Bernie Sanders to finally break through with black voters somewhere? You've seen the Working Families Party, which is a major force. You never heard of it if you're not in New York, but the Working Families Party is a major force. They gave Governor Cuomo fits. They are with him. They got strong black ties. The transit workers with Bernie Sanders, strong black ties. Been jealous. You had Spike Lee came out with an ad. Every black Bernie supporter, Harry Belafonte, Danny Glover, Rosario Dawson. If we can't break through with black voters in New York with that kind of display of force, it means there's something inherently wrong with the political revolution that for some reason cannot attract black voters. I'm going to be looking very closely at that tonight.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say if Donald Trump is running a competent campaign, this should be the beginning of the best 2 weeks of his candidacy. He has to win big here. I think he has to get over the 50% threshold to show he can do that. Keep in mind at the convention, he has to get over the 50% threshold. He has to show he can meet that metric. And then going into the mid-Atlantic states, he has to change. He has to be able to, at some point, this is his last best chance to offer a unifying, positive, inclusive message. If he doesn't begin that work now, he will never do it, and he will never have a chance of getting the nomination.
I think Donald Trump will win commandingly tonight. You look at Real Clear Politics, the last 15 polls taken in April, 14 of those show him breaching that 50% margin. But the flip side is, what does this mean for Ted Cruz if he comes in third? And then we look forward to April 26th, where there's a good chance he could come in third in Connecticut and Pennsylvania. Does Ted Cruz become Mr. Third Place? Is this the dampening of his momentum and the heightening of Donald Trump's momentum? I think that's where the stakes are tonight.
The three words that are going to Cruz if that happens: New York. That's an example of being tactical and not strategic.
Absolutely.
He did it in a place where people didn't like New Yorkers, and I think people, and he says this in New York, people knew what I meant. Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And New York may very well send him a
let's be
message that they
clear-eyed
got
about
that loud and
this.
clear.
New York was never going to be a Ted Cruz state necessarily. It's not a state Republicans are likely to win a general election. The name of the game for Cruz going mid-Atlantic states is just to pick up delegates along the way and to continue to talk to delegates about why they can count on him on the issues. Donald Trump's going to do what Donald Trump's going to do. He's going to bash people. He's going to campaign against the party. Cruz has to continue offering that clear, certain vision.
One of the great things about Ted Cruz, and I think because he's not going to do well tonight, people are going to kick him around. The guy's a genius. I mean, this guy, he saw a very long time ago, when nobody else saw it, that there was a big current building. And he figured out, I can go to D.C., I can crap on my own party, I can shut down the government, I can do all this stuff that just seemed bizarre, and I will be rewarded for it. And guess what? He's the last guy standing with any real chance against Donald Trump, and a lot of the people he offended are now with him. That shows that he's a Nixon. That shows the level of political smarts I think he hasn't been given credit for.
But he's not been doing well. Here's the thing. Ted Cruz should have won a state in the Southeast. Ted Cruz did not win a single state in the Southeast, a region he should have played very well in.
There were like 97 people running. There were like 97 people in the race at that point.
He wrote off the entire Northeast as well when he made the New York values comment. Ted Cruz is winning a narrow sliver of the country. The people have rejected him at the polls. They are coalescing around Donald Trump. Donald Trump coming out of nowhere and winning the way he is, never having been in politics, that's the story.
But Trump failed to consolidate his support. And he had an opportunity to do that when he was winning and winning and winning. And he didn't do that, and he lost Wisconsin. Then he made, his own mistakes after Wisconsin for a couple of weeks there. He didn't consolidate his support. He suffered from overconfidence and arrogance in the campaign, where they didn't organize the way they should have because they thought they didn't have to. And so that has been the real problem for him. I think the problem for Cruz is that if he goes into the convention 200 or 300 votes behind, he is negotiating from a position of weakness, not a position of strength. And I don't know what you think about that, Amanda, but the closer that Trump gets to 1237, the more likely it is that he would become the nominee. I don't know what the exact number is, but you can't go into the convention really far behind.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I think Cruz, if we do get into the convention, but I think is likely, he can, if anyone can make a good political argument. I mean, this is like not only going to the Supreme Court, this is the best political argument of your life you can make. And you say, look at my record, look at everything I've done in my life, which he really hasn't had a chance to talk about this much during this campaign because it's all about Lion Ted. He has a chance to remind people, look at what I did as Solicitor General. Look at the constitutional issues I've cared about for so long. You can count on me. Look at my record. I'm a proven quantity. And I think people find that very persuasive at the end of a very chaotic season.
Polls close a little less than 15 minutes from now in New York. We are standing by to learn the winners and to hear from Donald Trump live. Stay with us.
We're just minutes away from the top of the hour. That's when the polls close in New York. And we'll have a chance to project the winners of tonight's primaries. In the Republican race, will Donald Trump win on his home turf and rebound from a string of losses to Ted Cruz? All three candidates in a bitter fight for every single delegate as they likely headed to a contested convention. In the Democratic race, Hillary Clinton is hoping to end Bernie Sanders' recent winning streak and score an important victory in her adopted home state that would bring her closer to the nomination. The campaign now deeper into the home stretch. By the end of the evening, nearly 56% of all the Democratic delegates will have been awarded. The Republicans are even farther along. 72% of all Republican delegates will be assigned after tonight. As we await the results from New York, the candidates are preparing to fight until the last contest and beyond. Let's go over to Jake.
Thanks, Wolf. We have correspondents in New York and other key locations this evening. First, let's go to Brianna Keeler. She's at Hillary Clinton's New York headquarters. Brianna.
Hi there, Jake, and it's really starting to feel like a party here. The cash bar is open, the wine and beer is flowing. Yeah, that's a live band that has just started up, and there are not just one overflow room, but two, so we'll see if they fill those up. But you can just see the Clinton campaign is really expecting for this to be a very big night for her, and there's really nothing like winning an election in your home state. This is an event that has an energy unlike some of her others for sure. And if she does win here, as her campaign expects, it's going to be because of the coalition that she's been courting all along, but that has been very important to her here in New York. African Americans, Hispanic Americans, older Americans. It's no coincidence that she was in Spanish Harlem trying her hand at the merengue, or on some of her other campaign stops where she rode the subway. Where was it? In the Bronx. And that she also visited a senior citizen home here in New York City. These are the folks that she is relying on, Jake, to deliver a big night for her.
All right, Brianna Keeler in Clinton headquarters. Now let's go to Jim Acosta. He's with the other front runner on the Republican side, Donald Trump in New York City. Jim.
Jake, that's right, and we do expect to hear from Donald Trump in just the next couple of minutes here in Trump Tower in Manhattan. I will tell you that just a little while ago, about half an hour ago, we saw Donald Trump's campaign manager, who has spent a lot of time in the headlines lately, Corey Lewandowski. He was talking to reporters just briefly about what to expect later on tonight and beyond, and he was starting to set some expectations about the results that we're going to get in this New York primary. He was saying how difficult it would be for Donald Trump to cross that critical 50% threshold in every congressional district in the state and statewide in order to sweep all 95 delegates that are up for grabs in this state. That's throwing a bit of cold water on the hopes that we were hearing expressed from Trump campaign officials earlier today that they might be able to pull off that clean sweep. As you know, Jake, Corey Lewandowski has been in the news lately. He's been under heavy scrutiny, not only because of his interactions with reporters, but also his heavy-handed tactics, some say, inside the campaign. I asked him about some of the changes taking place inside the Trump campaign, Trump reorganizing his campaign, putting that longtime GOP operative Paul Manafort in charge of convention strategy. He is taking on a bigger role in the campaign. We're hearing Corey Lewandowski taking on a smaller role. Corey Lewandowski's response to a question about that, he said those changes mean that we are growing, baby, in his words. And just to go back to a conversation you were having about getting to 1237, are they getting assurances inside the Trump campaign? What if they fall short of 1237? According to Corey Lewandowski, we got to get to 1237, no question about it, Jake.
All right, that's right. 95 delegates up for grabs in New York. That's about 8% of the 1,237 needed to secure the nomination on the Republican side. Thanks, Jim. Let's go now to Sunlen Serfati. She's with Senator Ted Cruz. He's in Philadelphia tonight. And Sunlen, should we be reading into the fact that Senator Cruz is in a state that is not holding its primary tonight, is holding its primary in a week?
That's absolutely right, Jake. You know, the Cruz campaign and Senator Cruz himself not projecting confidence in any way at their chances in New York. We just heard Senator Cruz already wrap up his speech here in Philadelphia tonight. And his only mention that the New York primary is going on tonight, a brief mention at the top of his remarks where he said, I'm not going to talk to you about some politician tonight who's going to win his home state. He said, rather, he's going to talk about his vision forward. So all but ignoring the New York primary. And what he laid out tonight was more of a message of hope and inspiration than we've heard from him before, mentioning Steve Jobs, mentioning the U.S. putting men on the moon, really laying out a new vision for his campaign, saying, piggybacking on Barack Obama's yes, we can, saying it's not yes, we can, it's going to be yes, we will. And going forward, the Cruz campaign, though, they have set expectations rock bottom for tonight. A Cruz campaign official telling me earlier this evening that they do not expect to win any delegates at all coming out of New York. Jake?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting projection. Sunlen Serfati with the Cruz campaign in Pennsylvania. Thank you so much. Let's now bring in the executive editor of CNN Politics, Mark Preston. And Mark, as I don't need to tell you, there's a big debate right now about whom the Republican delegates should select at the Republican convention in Cleveland if no candidate achieves that magic majority number of 1,237. What do the voters want?
Well, Jake, certainly a divisive issue right now in the Republican primary. But when it comes to New York Republicans, let's take a look at what they think. More than 7 in 10 Republicans in New York believe that the person with the most delegates, whether or not they get to that magic number of 1,237, should become the Republican nominee. Now, of course, this is a very divisive debate within the Republican Party, something that could lead to a contested convention and show the more divisiveness and divisions in the Republican Party. But let's take a look at these numbers right here from New York Republicans who voted today. 3 in 10 did not actually vote in support of a candidate. They voted against a candidate. Again, another sign of a Republican Party right now that is fractured, and whoever wins the GOP nomination will have a lot of healing to do in the months of August, September, and October to bring the party together in the general election in November. Jake?
All right, thanks, Mark. And Dana, the poll indicating that a vast majority of New York Republicans think that if no one secures the magic number of delegates, whoever wins the most primaries, has the most number of delegates, they feel should be the nominee. That's a talking point. Rudy Giuliani, who is now a Trump supporter, he was talking about that on my show earlier today, saying that's what the voters want.
It certainly seems to be a big talking point, particularly for people like Rudy Giuliani, who voted for Trump. But when I was keeping your chair warm on Sunday, filling in on State of the Union, I talked to Reince Priebus and asked him this question in a few different ways, meaning why not just give the nomination to the person with the most votes? And his mantra continued to be, it's got to be the majority. It can't be a plurality. It's got to be a majority. And it's not just about the rules. It's about the tradition from his perspective and a lot of perspectives of Republican Party members.
It's very interesting, although we've heard Republican establishment figures talk about how they're optimistic there will be a second ballot or a third ballot. Wolf Blitzer, back to you in Washington.
All right, guys, thanks very much. I want to go over to John King over at the Magic Wall. We're only about 2 minutes away from the top of the hour. Show us what New York State is like right now.
So you pop up the state. Wolf, one of the things we'll be using later as we try to count the delegates, especially on the Republican side, let me come back over to New York and pull this out for you. I'll get there eventually. I'm trying to pull this map up for you, is we'll have this congressional overlay, because on the Republican delegates especially, we care about these congressional districts. So we'll lay this up a little bit later as the results come in. Very important for John Kasich. And you heard Sunlen Serfati say the Cruz campaign expects to come away with 0 tonight. Can John Kasich make inroads in these congressional delegations to take a few delegates away from Donald Trump? That's key. key on the Republican side. If you look to the state in itself, we're starting with the Democratic race here. What are we going to look for? Number one, most of the vote comes down here in New York City. And Van Jones raised the question earlier, can Bernie Sanders surprise us? Can he perform now with inner-city African Americans? Can he do better with Latino voters? Can he bring Hillary Clinton's margins down and conceivably come back for an upset victory here tonight?
2008 when Hillary Clinton won New York State against then-Senator Barack Obama.
And she won it pretty handily if you look at it. She had 57% of the vote to 40% of Obama. And significantly, again, you want to come down in here to the areas in the city, in New York City, where you have the African Americans. Queens, for example, she won 60-39. You come over here into Kings County, 49-49, Obama stronger there. Right in here into Manhattan in the city, a 9-point gap right in there.
What about on the Republican side in 2008?
The Republican side is interesting. The Republican side, if you pull back out so I can show you the entire state, the Republican side hasn't really mattered. I mean, if you look, John McCain won big in 2008. Mitt Romney won convincingly in 2012. That's why tonight is so fascinating on the Republican side, because the Republican race has not mattered in recent history inside New York. So what are we going to look for on the Republican side? The same thing. You want to see, these are overwhelmingly Democratic districts, but there are some districts down here in New York City where a couple hundred people might vote on the Republican side. Can John Kasich pick up delegates there? And Wolf, the other place to see is how does Donald Trump do upstate? Can he, if he's going to get all 95 delegates, he's got to carry all these congressional districts up here. He's known in New York City. We'll see if he can sell himself in your hometown of Buffalo, for example.
Buffalo, New York, a great town. All right, this is a big night for Donald Trump, for the Republicans. Very big night for Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders as well. Lots going on. The polls are about to close in New York State. In fact, they should be closing right now. And with the polls closed, CNN projects that Donald Trump, the billionaire real estate magnate, will win the Republican presidential primary in his home state of New York. We don't know how much he will win by. We don't know the delegate count yet, but we do project that Donald Trump will be the winner in the Republican presidential primary. A huge win for Donald Trump. We also have a key race alert. On the Democratic side, we have not able to make a projection. These are exit poll results. Look at how tight it is. This is a CNN estimate on the Democratic presidential primary based on exit poll information. Hillary Clinton at 52%, Bernie Sanders at 48%. Very close, according to our CNN estimate based on these exit polls. Remember, though, these are exit polls. They are estimates based on voter surveys as voters left polling locations throughout the day. The final outcome may be different. Very often those final outcomes could change. We expect the numbers, in fact, to change throughout the night. But you can see how close it is based on the exit poll information on the Democratic side. But let's take a look at the Republican side right now, because we have projected that Donald Trump is the winner. Jim Acosta is over at Trump headquarters. Jim, let's talk a little bit about it. I assume his supporters out there where you are, they're getting pretty excited.
Yes, they're getting very excited, Wolf, and we are jammed inside the lobby of Trump Tower right now here in Manhattan. You can see behind me all of the Trump campaign officials here in New York are here, as well as Trump family members. The campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, is standing right behind me. We do expect to hear from Donald Trump any minute now. They're getting the cheers going here. And I can tell you from talking to people inside the Trump campaign all day long, over the last couple of days, Wolf, they see this as a turning point in the campaign. Yes, they know that what happened in places like Wyoming and Colorado and Wisconsin were setbacks for this campaign, but they see what's happening here in New York, in the New York primary tonight, in his home state, as a reset for this campaign, as they really look forward to some favorable terrain in the Northeast and places like Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Connecticut, and then moving out west to California, where Donald Trump owns properties out there as well. They see the next couple of months as being crucial to getting to that magic number of 1237. And yes, they are worries inside the campaign. They won't get to that magic number, so we do know that they're starting to make preparations to go after some of those uncommitted delegates who will be very much sought after in the coming weeks. Well, Donald Trump has said he's not going to wine and dine those people. He's not going to put them on Trump Force One, his 757, but they do want to try to sit down and talk with some of those jittery, nervous party regulars inside the GOP who they know here inside the Trump campaign have expressed some deep reservations about some of what they've seen so far during this campaign. But one thing I heard from a top Trump delegate official earlier today is that what they're hearing from party regulars is that they don't mind Donald Trump's anti-establishment message. What they want to see is a professionally run campaign, and they think they're going to get the start of that out there in terms of an image to the public later on tonight, Wolf.
All right, Jim Acosta's over at Trump Tower. We're getting ready to hear from Donald Trump. He'll be speaking very soon, we're told. Jake and Dana, big win for Donald Trump. Very close, though, on the Democratic side.
That's right. And as we told you earlier this evening, we are going to be having the Empire State Building change its colors according to who we are projecting will win. And since CNN has projected Donald Trump will be the winner of the New York Republican primary, we are turning the Empire State Building the dark crimson, the red that signifies Donald Trump in this color scheme that we have. We also have the Democratic contest to call as well. But Dana, I mean, no surprise that Donald Trump won the state of New York, but the fact that it's being called so early suggests a very, very strong victory.
Yeah, absolutely. First, can I just say I feel like I'm in a Nora Ephron movie. That's so cool that we can see that. It's a very New York
And you thought
thing.
the magic wall was cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty amazing. But yes, Donald Trump, the fact that it was in a nanosecond after polls are closed does give a sense of how well he's going to do. But it is now time to look at the delegates, not to take away from his victory. It's an important victory, but every single delegate is so crucial for him. If he can get close to that 95, it will make a very big difference going forward, not just for here, but next week. He's got a lot of states where he is expected to do quite well in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. So the feeling inside the Trump campaign, they hope, is that, as Jim was just talking to, people I spoke to as well, tonight, next week, the inside stuff that's going on in Florida with the Republican National Committee meeting this week, where Trump advisors are going down to speak to try to reassure the party, even though the leaders are having public spats. All of those combined, the feeling is that the party will finally look at him and say, okay, that's the front runner. That's our guy.
I want to turn to our executive editor of CNN Politics right now, Mark Preston. And Mark, right now the Democratic race too close to call. The exit polls show a very, very slim margin of victory for Hillary Clinton, but too close to call as of right now. What do we know about the Democratic voters who went to the polls today?
Well, let's take a look at the generational and the policy differences between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Let's look at the age of voters, first of all. Right there, Hillary Clinton overwhelmingly picks up the support of voters the age 65 and older. More than 7 in 10 of those voters supported the former Secretary of State. Bernie Sanders only gets 3 in 10 of those voters. But let's go to the other end of the spectrum, and let's look at younger voters. 18 to 29-year-olds overwhelmingly supported Bernie Sanders. Again, more than 7 in 10 of those voters supported Sanders. And again, should Hillary Clinton become the nominee, those are voters she is going to have to try to bring into the Democratic fold. Let's talk about 2 issues that have been very hot this whole campaign, certainly over the last 2 weeks. Who would better handle gun policy? Hillary Clinton, 56%. Bernie Sanders at 39%. Now, we know that Hillary Clinton has made this a big issue. We saw that in the CNN debate just last week. But on the issue of Wall Street, which really has been the clarion call for Bernie Sanders, 59% of those who think that Wall Street is hurting the U.S. economy is backing the Vermont senator. Only 41% say that Hillary Clinton would be the person to handle Wall Street. So there you go, Jake, a division among generational as well as policy differences.
Very interesting. And Dan, I think I saw some exit poll numbers earlier in the day suggesting that it's something like 60%, 65% of Democrats who voted today think that Wall Street is bad for the economy. And also something like half of the Republicans who voted today think that way about the economy. It's one of the ways that we've seen this overlap in anger over some issues where you have actually Trump and Bernie Sanders having some issues on which they agree.
That's right. It's the populist strain that's been going through the Republican Party. And even though Trump is of and for and about New York, he's never been about Wall Street. It's not his thing. In fact, he's been, for him, considering the fact that he's a mogul here, anti-Wall Street. So it does dovetail.
Let me go to Wolf Blitzer right now, who has a key race alert. Wolf.
All right, Jake, thank you. Let's get to a key race alert right now. The first numbers, actual numbers coming in. We projected Donald Trump is the winner on the Republican side. Very, very early, only about 1,000 votes counted so far. But you can see he's way ahead already, 68.6% to John Kasich, who's in second place, 17.8%. Ted Cruz in third place, only 13.6%. Once again, less than 1%. Very, very early on the Republican side. But we have projected Donald Trump will win the Republican presidential primary. On the Democratic side, also very early. These are the original first numbers, still just coming in right now. You see Hillary Clinton with 60%, Bernie Sanders 40%, but this is still very early. Our exit poll information shows it's a close, very close race, and we're not able yet to make a projection on the Democratic side. We'll see what happens. Anderson, over to you.
Very much a big night, obviously, for Donald Trump. Kayla, you're a supporter of his. How do you feel?
You know, tonight, he said last week in his Wall Street Journal op-ed, I'm unwilling to defend a system that empowers the party over the people. Well, tonight the people spoke. They did so commandingly. You see Donald Trump getting possibly over that 50% margin, could take every delegate in New York, perhaps. Certainly looks like he's at least going to get over 80. Tonight's a tremendous victory, and I think the tide is turning in the race as we go look forward to next Tuesday. He's going to probably win Connecticut, Pennsylvania. He's doing exceedingly well, and I think tonight the tides are turning, and we're going to see a presumptive nominee.
You know, I'm just so curious to see what Donald Trump says in this victory speech, because he's made such a big deal about the system being rigged, although, you know, if it were rigged, it's pretty terribly because he's winning. So what is he going to say here? If this is his message, that we have to beat the establishment, whatever that is, what is your vision to replace it? Because to scream that the system's rigged in every state where you don't win, in order to show some kind of consistency, you have an obligation to say what the system should be. He has never done that. What kind of reforms is he proposing? Because if he's just saying, I want to win and it's not fair when I don't win, that's not good enough. And
Every
people see
person
through
gets
that.
to vote. That's his system. He wants every person to have a vote. That means the 1 million
the delegates in
disenfranchised.
Florida and the winner take all
That means
states?
the 1 million disenfranchised voters in Colorado get to speak. That means voters in Wyoming get to speak. He wants everybody in the Republican Party to get to vote.
The amazing thing about Trump, kind of watching him now, is he's like, there's all these rules, and it's so terrible. I'm like, welcome to the federal government, dude. If you ever become president of the United States, you cannot imagine the level of rules and bureaucracies. It's just not as easy to do the stuff that he says, and he's learning that himself on the campaign trail.
Well, and on the political side, a president has to unite a really impossibly diverse country, but a party leader needs to unite his party. And so far, every time it looks like Donald Trump is going to win, going to be the nominee, he self-sabotages. I'm not a shrink.
Do you believe? I mean, there's all this. You know, for a long time though, he's been claiming he can be more presidential. You're going to see that. I mean,
I think we might
believe that, and where does that
I
actually?
just have to knock two more guys off before I become more presidential. But you know, I have to give him his due here.
Right.
I'm not sure strategically that, given the fact that he is flirting with that 1237 and he may land on one side of it or the other, setting up a construct that says, if he's the clear front runner and doesn't get the nomination, that there's something wrong with the system. That seems strategically sound to me. I think he can be faulted for not knowing the system. I think Ted Cruz is running
but those circles delegates around are him. in the system. You can't get them by saying that they're corrupt.
You know, but
no,
tonight...
but these folks also have to, within the party, have to look at all of these polls that suggest that large numbers of Republicans think that the right result would be the person who has the most delegates gets the
And also,
nomination.
does it matter that he doesn't know the rules or hasn't paid attention to that? He's winning.
He's winning.
He's winning.
And I
He's getting the most votes.
I think we have to give him his due.
No, it's true.
Tonight,
No.
he's had a huge victory, and right now he's the only Republican who has a mathematical, real chance of clinching the nomination the old-fashioned way, which is getting it before you get to the convention.
Yeah,
and that is what New York has done.
Mathematical point, because he's about to celebrate tonight one of the biggest victories of his campaign. Give him his just due, but also take a look at the internal numbers. If I told you that 40% said they were concerned or scared about a Donald Trump presidency, you'd say that must be a Democratic number. No, that's a New York Republican number. So on the very night that he'll have this enormous victory, 4 out of 10 are saying, I'd be frightened if he were the president and they're Republicans.
Yeah, and you saw some similar numbers like that in Wisconsin, a state he lost. Surprising that it's that high in New York, which is his state. I think the fear comes from the fact that, sure, he's been able to have his coalition in the Republican Party, 33 to 40%, but he hasn't turned toward the general at all. I mean, let alone uniting the entire Republican Party. You see from most front runners an eye toward the general and a need to expand and win independent voters, win African-American voters, win women voters, and I think that's what the fear is about.
Do you think, and we're waiting for Donald Trump to speak, do you think we see the same Donald Trump that we have seen all along? Does he start to try to make some sort of a turn, or
he
is
told
that
you months ago in an interview?
Right.
Oh, I can be more presidential, and we're still waiting. He's a very charming guy. He's a great speaker.
Since the retweet happened of Heidi Cruz, which was a mistake, since then, what has happened that has made him look unpresidential? Nothing, I would argue. We
Maybe
have seen a new Donald
the
Trump
Cruz campaign of engaging in bribery, fraud, and illegal coordination with the super PAC?
No, he has said repeatedly that the system is rigged against him, and I think that is the case when we look at Georgia, where you had Trump delegates who were put forward.
We got another key race alert. Let's just go to Wolf for that. Wolf?
All right, let's get this key race alert right now. More numbers are coming in on the Republican side. Donald Trump, we've projected he is the winner of the Republican presidential primary, but look at this. A few thousand votes are in very, very early. He's got 69.5%. Ohio Governor John Kasich in second place as of right now with 18.3%. Ted Cruz down at only 12.1%. Once again, very early, but remember, Donald Trump, we projected, is the winner. On the Democratic side, only 2% of the vote is in so far. Hillary Clinton has a pretty impressive lead, but this is very, very early. She's at 62.2% to Bernie Sanders, 37.8%. She's almost 10,000 votes ahead. But once again, this is very early. Our exit poll results showed this was a very, very close race, but that is an estimate based on exit poll information. We're waiting to hear from Donald Trump. He's getting ready to speak over at Trump Tower in New York City. We're also waiting to hear from Hillary Clinton. We'll have live coverage, much more, coming up right after this. Donald Trump getting ready to speak over at Trump Tower, Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. He is projected to be the big winner tonight on the Republican side. He wins the Republican presidential primary. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton will also be speaking over at Hillary Clinton headquarters in New York. We're standing by to hear from her as well. We'll be hearing from Bernie Sanders. Very close race based on the exit poll information on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, not very close at all, although we'll see how the delegates in New York State, all 95, are sent out. Let's take a key race alert right now. Take a look at this. On the Republican side, first of all, very early, only 3% of the vote is in. Donald Trump way ahead, 68.9%. John Kasich at 18.5%. Ted Cruz, a distant third, only 12.6%. Once again, very early, but an impressive lead in New York for Donald Trump. On the Democratic side, 7% of the vote is in. It's coming in relatively quickly, 61.6% for Hillary Clinton so far, 38.4% for Bernie Sanders. She's ahead by more than 32,000 votes right now. 8% of the vote is in, but remember, still very, very early. The exit poll information showed it's a very close race. Let's go over to John King right now. On the Republican side, the key is going to be how he's going to do in all these congressional districts. There are 27 of them. If he wins them all, he's got a huge night.
He does. The first test is get the statewide at-large delegates by being over 50% of the vote. This is only 3% counted, Wolf, but Donald Trump near 70%. We have every reason to believe, every confidence, based on our exit polling, based on key precincts, based on the early results we're seeing, that Donald Trump will end the night with a 50% plus win statewide. Now, that gets you the at-large delegates, but you're right. 80 plus of the 95 come in these congressional districts. So one of the things we're going to have to do throughout the night is take the congressional district map and overlay the state and get a sense of, is Donald Trump getting over 50%, not just statewide, but in each of these congressional districts. If you go under 50%, then the winner gets 2 and the second place finisher gets 1. So does Trump get 95, or do Kasich and Cruz pick some delegates away? That's one thing we're going to have to watch, and we'll use this congressional map overlay to do it. As we do that, the reason I say that is just let's look right here. As the map fills in predominantly for Donald Trump, we do have New York County, known to most Americans and most New Yorkers as Manhattan, at the moment, right now, John Kasich. But again, 23% of the expected vote in, John Kasich ahead a little bit. No guarantee John Kasich is going to win Manhattan. A lot of votes to count. But there is one congressional district right in here. If John Kasich, for example, were to hold that, if he's at 45%, he would get 2. So we'll see what happens. It looks like there's a possibility of Kasich picking up some delegates in these more moderate areas. But if you just go through and take a look here in the Bronx, Donald Trump in the early vote at near 70%. You come down here to Queens, 65%. You come here now, Wolf. I think Kings County has a ring to it, don't you? Mm-hmm. Brooklyn is what the world calls this. They could have left it Kings County. It would have been fine with me. 70% there. And Donald Trump running very strong out here. Richmond County, Turan McNally, Staten Island. To New Yorkers and most Americans here, Donald Trump running above 80%. So if you take it out statewide and take a look, early results so far, now you see Donald Trump up at 70%. I don't have any question he's going to crack 50%. The question then will be congressional district by congressional district to see if he gets 95 or if it looks like Kasich at the moment is a threat to maybe take 3, 4, 5 of those away from him.
These are the counties, not the congressional districts. And obviously, the congressional districts don't coincide. Let's take a look at the Democratic side now.
Right. And again, as you see so far, we have some rural counties coming in, relatively small counties, 1.2% the population here. Sanders running ahead out in the rural areas. But that's one of the things he wants to do among rural Democrats to get some votes out there to offset what he expects to be Hillary Clinton's advantage down here in the city. It's hard to see the city, so you have to stretch it out. But again, so far, New York City coming in all for Hillary Clinton. Let's just go through as we look. Up in the Bronx, 28% of the vote in. She's at 70%. That's quite impressive. Remember, Democratic congressional districts, Democratic rules, you get a little bit of a bonus in the districts with a heavy minority population. So down here in the city area, very important. You come into look in the Manhattan area here, Hillary Clinton at 66%. Ronnie here in Queens now at 60%. In Brooklyn, she's leading at 58%, and out in Staten Island at 52%. So in the city area, Hillary Clinton doing quite well so far, which is the base of the Democratic vote. But, Wolf, we have to see the part of the state you're quite familiar with, hometown of Buffalo, and up here, watch this pull in to see if Senator Sanders, based on the exit polls, we see a tight race. Let's count them, see how it goes.
Yeah, let's do it the old-fashioned way, count the actual votes. All right, let's go over to Jake and Dana because they're watching. They're in New York right now. They're watching it very closely. Jake?
Thanks, Wolf. Yeah, we're looking at Donald Trump and the numbers coming in, and boy, is he dominating 80% of the vote, of the Republican vote out in Staten Island. Let's go to our CNN Politics executive editor, Mark Preston. Mark, we don't know the exact number right now, but it does look like Donald Trump is having a dominant evening. Why? What were the Republican voters looking for?
Well, let's first look at the quality right now. Qualities that New York Republicans were looking for specifically. The number one quality was a candidate who could bring about change. And if you look at these numbers right there, Donald Trump wins that decisively. 68% of those voters went for Donald Trump. John Kasich barely gets 2 in 10 of those voters. And of course, Ted Cruz down there at 13%. As we told you earlier this evening, 6 in 10 Republicans wanted an outsider as their nominee. Donald Trump overwhelmingly wins those voters, 85%. Ted Cruz only picks up 9% of those voters. John Kasich picks up 6%. Perhaps the most important quality, though, is heading into November. Who can defeat Hillary Clinton? Look at that. Donald Trump at 56%. It really does give us the reasons why Donald Trump easily won his home state of New York tonight. Jake.
Very interesting, Mark Preston. Thanks. And that's interesting also about the number on can defeat Hillary Clinton, assuming, of course, she's the Democratic nominee. We expect that Donald Trump is the outsider. We see him feuding with the Republican National Committee every day. We expect him to have a reputation in this area for bringing about needed change. But the idea that he's the most electable, that's not necessarily an issue that Republican voters have cared that much about in this election cycle.
That's right, because listen to any time John Kasich opens his mouth talking about why he's still in the race, his answer is because I'm the only one who can beat Hillary Clinton. That's his argument. And in this case, it looked like New York voters did not say so, but I think that's also what happened when you are as dominant as Donald Trump appears to be here in New York tonight, across the board, across the state. We'll see how he fares in every one of the 27 congressional districts, whether he can really run the board and get all 95 delegates. But if those numbers are any indication, he could come really close.
All right, let's go to Wolf Blitzer, who has a key race alert. Wolf.
All right, let's take a look at the key race alert right now. Let's go to the Democrats first. Take a look at this. 15% of the vote is now in. Hillary Clinton has a commanding lead. 16% of the vote is now in. 61.8%, 38.2% for Bernie Sanders. She's up by more than 70,000 votes right now, but we have not projected a winner on the Democratic side. The exit polls showed it would be pretty close. 16% of the vote is in, though, and she's got a commanding lead. On the Republican side, Donald Trump is the winner, but right now with 7% of the vote in, he's ahead by 25,000, 67.6% for Trump, but 19.5% for Kasich. We're standing by to hear from Donald Trump momentarily. Also, we'll be hearing from Hillary Clinton. Much more of our coverage coming up right after this. Take a look at this. Live pictures coming in from Trump Tower in New York. A very, very happy Donald Trump getting ready to deliver a victory speech over there. We'll have live coverage. That's coming up. We've projected he's the winner of the Republican presidential primary in his home state of New York. Let's get a key race alert right now. On the Republican side, 9% of the vote is in. You see Trump with 65.1% of the vote. To Kasich, 21.2%. Ted Cruz, 13.7%. Just changed, 10% of the vote is in. Trump still maintaining an impressive lead, 65.2%. We'll see if that holds throughout the night. On the Democratic side, we have not projected a winner, but right now, with about a quarter of the vote in, Hillary Clinton has a nearly 100,000 vote lead over Bernie Sanders. She's at 61.1%, 38.9% for Bernie Sanders. 24% of the vote is in, but we have not projected a winner in the Democratic contest in New York. Anderson.
Will Flitzer, thanks very much. I mean, Kayleigh, when you look at Trump's victory in New York, it is extraordinary. I mean, it is not just a wave of support, it's a tsunami of Trump support.
Absolutely, because he came in and he knew the temperature of this electorate. We see in state after state, in diverse electorates from South Carolina to Nevada to New York, people are angry at the federal government. Not only that, in most states, a majority feel betrayed by the Republican Party. So Donald Trump knew that that's what people want.
And there's Donald Trump, Melania Trump. He's not starting to speak yet. We'll obviously bring you his comments live. He's walking around, saying hello to well-wishers there at Trump Tower. It is from here, though. I mean, he's got a lot of states which are very favorable for him. And so, I mean, when you talk about momentum, when you talk about just the next couple of weeks, it looks very good for Donald Trump.
Absolutely. When we look forward to next week, and you've got Pennsylvania and Maryland and Connecticut, we are going to see, I think, the same margins of victory, the same sort of victories, and he is going to be an unstoppable force. And I really think this whole conversation of an open convention might very well become nil.
It is interesting, Van, because Donald Trump all along has been saying he thinks he's going to get 1237 before the convention.
Well, first of all, just look at his face and that family. Say what you want to about Donald Trump. Nobody has criticized that family. And you got to imagine, you know, he goes to New York. He's a young guy. He's an entrepreneur. He's got some backing from his dad. He builds all these, monuments to himself. And now he gets to walk through them, having won decisively his home state, his hometown, with his family. Look, I hope this is his last happy day. It's a happy day to be a Trump. If you're a Trump, you're happy today.
And let's look at the time that this win occurred. He needed this moment to happen now. He's had a rough couple weeks. This was the best time to have a New York win.
And let's listen in.
Number one, top quality nice, I have to say, to the people that know me the best, the people of New York, when they give us this kind of a vote. And it's just incredible. And I guess we're close to 70%, and we're going to end at a very high level and get a lot more delegates than anybody projected, even in their wildest imagination. So I just want to thank everybody here. I want to thank my family. I want to thank... I really want to thank my team. My team has been amazing. And, it's actually a team of unity. It's evolving, but people don't understand that. The press does understand it. They just don't want to talk about it. That's okay. Just keep talking. It's very important. Keep talking. But this has been an incredible evening. It's been an incredible day and week. We went all over New York State. New York State has problems like virtually every other state in the union. Our jobs are being sucked out of our states. They're being taken out of our country, and we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're going to stop it. Very importantly, and behind me I have to say, we have some of our great businessmen of the world. Carl Icahn is here someplace. Where's Carl? Howard Lorber, Ben LeBeau, the great Steve Roth. Steve's building a big building on Central Park South. It's a tremendous success. I said, Steve, congratulations on the building. He said, Donald, it's nothing compared to what's happening with you. Is that right, my man? So anyway, we're proud of him. But we have our great leaders, and it has been really something. It has been really something amazing. And believe me, we are going to use our great business people to negotiate unbelievable trade deals so we bring our jobs back and we don't let our companies go to Mexico and all of these other countries anymore. We're going to keep the jobs here You're going to be very proud of this country very soon. We're going to build our military bigger, better, stronger than ever before. Nobody is going to mess with us. That I can tell you. We're going to take care of our vets. Our vets are great people, and we have forgotten our vets. Illegal immigrants are taken care of in many cases better than our vets. That's not going to happen anymore. That is not going to happen. We're getting rid of Obamacare. It's going to be repealed and replaced. It is a total disaster with premiums going up 35, 45, 55%. It's going to probably end of its own volition. We're getting rid of it. We're bringing Common Core. We're knocking it out. We're cutting it. It's going to be over, and we're bringing education locally. Local communities are going to take care of their educational needs, and people have been waiting for that for a long time. So with all of the things that have happened today, tonight, and over the week, I'll tell you what, this has been an amazing week. All over New York State, we went to Syracuse, we went to Albany, 20,000 people. I mean, on average, we'd have 15 to 20,000 people. We went to Rochester, we went to Bethpage, we went all over. And you know what? The people of this country and the people of this state truly are great and amazing people. We are going to be so strong again. We are going to be really, I mean, legitimately so great again. And I just can't wait. So we don't have much of a race anymore based on what I'm seeing on television. Senator Cruz is just about mathematically eliminated. And we've won another state. As you know, we have won millions of more votes than Senator Cruz, millions and millions of more votes than Governor Kasich. We've won, and now, especially after tonight, close to 300 delegates more than Senator Cruz. We're really, really rocking. We expect we're going to have an amazing number of weeks because these are places and they're in trouble. They're in big trouble. When you look at Pennsylvania, when you look at Indiana, when you look at Maryland and Rhode Island and so many places, we have problems everywhere you look. We are going to solve those problems. And one of the big problems is the economy and jobs, and that is my wheelhouse. So, again, I want to thank everybody. It's really nice to win the delegates with the votes. You know, it's really nice. Nope. Nobody should be given delegates, which is a ticket to victory, and it's not a fair ticket. And even though we're leading by a lot and we can't be caught, it's impossible to catch us. Nobody should take delegates and claim victory unless they get those delegates with voters and voting. And that's what's going to happen. And you watch, because the people aren't going to stand for it. It's a crooked system. It's a system that's rigged. And we're going to go back to the old way. It's called you vote and you win. So we'll be going into the convention no matter what happens, and I think we're going to go in so strong. And over the next number of weeks, we just saw a poll come out of California, which is an unbelievable poll. But we're going to go into the convention, I think, as the winner. But nobody can take an election away with the way they're doing it in the Republican Party. And by the way, I am no fan of Bernie. But I've seen Bernie win, and then I watch, and they say he has no chance of winning. So they have their superdelegate. The Republican system is worse. So I want to just thank everybody. I have great, great admiration and praise for the city of New York and the state of New York. I can think of nowhere that I would rather have this victory. So we love you all. Have a great evening. We celebrate. And tomorrow morning, we go back to work. I'm flying tomorrow morning. To Indiana. I'm going to Pennsylvania. I will be all over. So we're going to celebrate for about 2 hours. Then early in the morning, I get up and we begin working again. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, New York. We love New York. We love New York. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
The winner of the Republican New York primary, Donald Trump, with a dominant lead. And I have to say, Dana Bash, listening to Donald Trump, we've been talking for the last couple weeks about how he has become a more disciplined candidate, how he has been saying fewer things that get him off message. And we heard that man this evening. He did not refer to Lion Ted.
Nope.
He referred to Senator Cruz over and over and over. He did not refer to John Kasich even by his first name. He called him Governor Kasich. He stuck to two basic messages in addition to expressing gratitude. One is that the trade deals have been bad for the economy, and that's why he's doing well in places like New York, and why he thinks he will do well in Pennsylvania, in Indiana, and Rhode Island, and other places. And then the second issue, which he's been talking about quite a bit, is how he says the system, in this case the election system, the Republican primary system, is rigged. And that is one of the other messages that he's been delivering. It helps paint him as an outsider at war with the elites. It also helps him, should he get to the Republican convention in Cleveland without that magic 1,237 number of delegates he needed. But that Donald Trump you heard this evening, that is the Donald Trump pivoting to become a general election candidate.
I could not agree with you more. And even when he did talk about the system being rigged, it was on a much more subdued level, because he realizes, and maybe more importantly, the people he is now surrounding himself with realize, that he has to work within that system to get the delegates, to keep the delegates he has now, as they're actually being formally elected and chosen throughout the states that he won, and to continue to win them going forward, because the system is what it is. So he's trying to kind of walk a fine line as he does try to give off an air of somebody who is going to be the nominee. Whether he is or not, that's a different story. But there's no question that this was a fundamentally different Donald Trump, candidate Donald Trump. And I think fair to say maybe less reality TV show Donald Trump.
That we've been hearing, those of us who have been covering Donald Trump now for almost a year have been talking to people who know him, and many of them say there are two Donald Trumps, and this is the second one. The first one causing a lot of agita for his party, offending a lot of people. This is the second one that many of them predicted he would pivot to. Wolf, let's go back to you in Washington.
Thanks very much. We just heard Donald Trump. He spoke for 8 minutes. He's had a victory speech. He is the winner in the New York State Republican presidential primary. But now we have a major projection on the Democratic side. And take a look at this. Hillary Clinton is the winner of the New York State Democratic presidential primary based on the actual votes that have come in, based on the exit poll information that we have. CNN now projects the former Secretary of State is the winner of the New York State Democratic presidential primary. They're going wild over there at Clinton headquarters in New York. Brianna Keeler, very excited over there right now. Hillary Clinton is the winner. Set the scene for us. We will be hearing from her soon. They just heard us make the projection.
Well, you can see, Wolf, and it's actually very hard to hear you because the crowd here is so loud, but they are listening to the projection right now on CNN. And very excited. This is her home state, and there's really nothing like winning in your home state. A very supportive crowd. We are expecting that tonight is going to be a family affair with Bill and Chelsea Clinton on stage with Secretary Clinton, something that we actually have not seen since New Hampshire. But a lot of the enthusiasm here also, I'm told, comes from the fact that you have many campaign staffers, a lot of whom are from New York, and they have invited their families. So it's a very invested crowd. I should also tell you, as the Sheridan Midtown here is bumping, this is where Hillary Clinton celebrated her 2006 re-election to the Senate, and where, of course, Wolf, as we are awaiting her speech here, she will be celebrating 10 years later a win for the Democratic nomination in the New York primary.
Important win for Hillary Clinton in New York State. She is the winner of the Democratic presidential primary. Let's go over to Jake and Dan.
Thanks, Wolf. Well, earlier this evening, when we projected that Donald Trump would be the winner of the New York Republican primary, we turned the top of the Empire State Building deep red. That was the color that CNN had designated for Donald Trump. Now let us turn the top of the Empire State Building the color blue that we have assigned to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, dark blue, and there you see it, the Empire State Building, dark blue in honor as a projection of the victory of Hillary Clinton. And Dana Bash, I have to say, this is a big victory for Secretary Clinton. A few weeks ago, there were people, allies of hers, who thought, oh my God, it's possible that she might not even win her home state. But at the end of the day, she did. She knows the state very well. She's campaigned here statewide several times, starting in 1999 for the Senate seat, and a big, sweet victory for her this evening.
Oh, no question about it. A huge victory for her, especially since when you think about it, Brianna mentioned the 10-year mark. It really has been 10 years since she ran for re-election as senator here. And of course, she ran in the New York primary, but as Clinton supporters remind us, Barack Obama didn't really compete here because what was the point? She was a sitting senator. So this is something that is incredibly sweet for her, important. And we'll see what happens when it comes to the proportionality of it, whether or not Bernie Sanders really can rack up some delegates. But at this point, give her due. She has a hometown win.
And we'll see what the margins are. We're expecting to hear from former Secretary of State and former New York Senator Hillary Clinton any minute now. We'll bring that to you live. We're going to take this very quick break. More of CNN's election coverage after this quick message.
Whether or not Bernie Sanders really can rack up some delegates.
Donald Trump is the winner in the New York State Republican presidential primary. Hillary Clinton is the winner in the Democratic presidential primary. We're waiting to hear from Hillary Clinton. She'll be delivering a victory speech soon. We'll have live coverage of that coming up. In the meantime, let's go over to John King. Now the all-important delegate allocation on the Republican side, Democratic side. That's critically important on the Republican side first.
And we do know this. Our decision team desk, and they work really hard. We should put them on camera more often because they're a great part of our organization. They are quite certain now, based on these early results, based on their analysis of key precincts, that Donald Trump, we do project, not only is the winner, but will win with above 50% statewide. It looks like he might end up near in the 60% ballpark statewide, but Donald Trump will win above 50% statewide, which means he gets the 14 at-large delegates, all for Donald Trump, because he's above 50%. Now the question is for the other 81. You do those. There's 3 for each of the 27 congressional districts, and we're going to have to watch as the results come in. But as you see this come in, and you just tap into these counties. Now, these are counties, not congressional districts. You have to draw the lines of the districts, but just look at what's happening. 51% up here, 49% here, 49.8% here. So when we put the congressional map overlay in later, when we get them, we'll have to see if Trump can, if enough of the counties, the 51s, bring him up. Let's move over to a place you know very well, Erie County, the home of Wolf Blitzer, Buffalo, 67%. So at the moment, Trump is on track. He's not only going to win 50% statewide, but he's running up pretty impressive numbers that it looks like he is going to get close to 95, which is all 95. I will say this. One county right now shaded for Ted Cruz. It's a tiny rural county, and only 1% of the vote is in right now, 7 votes to 4 to 3, but we'll keep an eye on that. But you just heard Donald Trump say he was thrilled to get the support of the people who know him best. If there is potentially one, you can decide what degree of a scar it is on Trump's victory, it's in Manhattan right now that Donald Trump calls home. John Kasich is actually beating him by a little more than 300 votes with about 80% of the vote in. Not a lot of Republicans voting so far in Manhattan. We'll keep an eye on this to see if it changes as it goes on. But if there's one scar on what otherwise is a very impressive Donald Trump win in New York tonight, it will be if in his backyard of Manhattan he loses to John Kasich. What would that mean? It would mean Kasich would get a couple. Let me pull this back out. There's a lot of this area stretches into several congressional districts. There's one right here in Manhattan, so possible 3, 4, 5 delegates for John Kasich based on this. If that stays like that, you still have Donald Trump somewhere in the ballpark of 90, potentially more delegates as we count the votes in New York, and you just watch as it fills in, Wolf. This is very impressive for Donald Trump. He had 2 weeks from Wisconsin. Ted Cruz obviously beat him in Wisconsin. This is filling in. It's just a slam dunk for Trump.
And 31% of the vote is in. He's got 62%. Right. That is very, very impressive. You heard Donald Trump say that for Senator Ted Cruz, it's almost mathematically now impossible for him to get 1237 on that first ballot. Does he have a point?
Yes, he does. So let's go over to the delegate map. We could show you that. Ted Cruz has to win in the 90% of what's left. It's just inconceivable. I'm going to give you this here. Let's say Donald Trump, I'm going to give him all 95. It might be closer to 90, but let's give him 95 for now and see where that would put Donald Trump out here around 850. You see Ted Cruz is on track to get a goose egg tonight. That's 95 delegates, and he's going to get none of them, which leaves him back here. And then if you project forward to April, I just want to go through the rest of April, this is giving Donald Trump 75% of the delegates next Tuesday night, where let's see if Ted Cruz can pick some up in Pennsylvania. Let's see if he can find a way to pick some up in Maryland. But at the moment, Donald Trump, and we assume he gets momentum out of the big New York win. He was already leading in all these other states for next Tuesday. Then Donald Trump is out here past the 75% mark. Ted Cruz, even if he picks up a few, is still way back here. It is mathematically near impossible. There's about that much of a chance. You could just put a piece of paper through the possibility of Ted Cruz getting there. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. That's assuming Ted Cruz gets 90% in California. And he's done well out in the West here, but it's just Ted Cruz knows this, and you've heard it from him in recent days. His only chance is at a contested convention. The challenge now is to keep Donald Trump with a big win tonight, potential for another big wins plural.
5 states next Tuesday.
Right. There's a possibility. If you look at this math here, 955, there's a possibility that Donald Trump is even closer to 960, somewhere in that ballpark, at the end of April. Then there are 502 delegates left.
How does he get to 1237? That's the number he needs on the first ballot in Cleveland to avoid some sort of contested convention.
So let's just put this out a little bit, put this race all the way out to June. This assumed Donald Trump, New Jersey, winner take all. Donald Trump wins in West Virginia. Ted Cruz continues his success out here in the West, right? So this scenario gives Indiana to Cruz. Watch this and pay attention to that as we go. If you go out here now and Donald Trump can win 70% in California, that's a tough task. But if he can win big in New York tonight, if he gets momentum, they say he's going to spend TV money out in California. If he did that, what did I get him? I just got him to 1211. Now, this is being very generous to Trump in winning the delegates here on pace like he looks like tonight, 70% in California. That would get him to 1211. So can you get him there? Well, can he take Indiana instead of having Ted Cruz win Indiana? That gets you up to 1222. Pick Washington or Oregon. Let's say he can somehow come back, win Washington instead of Ted Cruz. Unlikely a conservative base state there, but that gets him to 1236. Wow. If you see that math right there. But look, this is a scenario, but just think of where we are. Now we're trying to tinker to see if he could upset in this state or do a little better in that state. But it's not hard. It's not hard. The best way to put this is it's not hard to get Donald Trump to 1210. It's not that inconceivable to get Donald Trump above 1175 and to 1200, and in a best-case scenario, to get Donald Trump either just over 1237 or so close to it that if he's at 1225 and you arrive in Cleveland, it would be near impossible to see the Republican Party. And remember, that would be after June 7th. They would have time before the convention. If he's at 1220 or even 1175, then you go back to the 54 non-committed delegates in Pennsylvania and you say, hey, I won your state with 50% plus. You got to come to me. You go to the unbound delegates from Guam, American Samoa, the Virgin Islands. You try to lobby Marco Rubio delegates. Maybe you try to cut a deal with John Kasich. So where Donald Trump is on June 7th, you then have time before the convention. And if he's above 1200, above 1175, you would assume the guy who wrote the Art of the Deal we'll try to make some deals.
Yeah, June 7th, that's when California, the biggest prize of them all. Let's go back to New York on the Democratic side. Take a look at Hillary Clinton. We've projected she's the winner in New York. She's trying to get to that magic number of pledged delegates, although she does have an impressive lead among those so-called super delegates.
And remember, when the exit polls came in, we didn't have projection right off the bat because it was 52-48. As the results come in, we see, at least so far, a little over half of the count in 53%. And the vote totals right now, a more generous win for Secretary Clinton than those exit polls suggested. You see Bernie Sanders winning a lot of these counties upstate, including your home county of Erie County up here, 51-48. It's more competitive up there if you look at it. But Bernie Sanders doing what his campaign said he needed to do, which was do very well upstate, although in the urban areas, you come over here to Rochester, it's narrow, but Hillary Clinton winning there. You move over here, let's take a look at Syracuse, a little bit bigger margin for her in Syracuse right there, 26% of the vote in. The bulk of the vote, of course, is down here in the city. And if you come down here into the city and take a look at it, number one, let's start out here in the suburbs and come down. Westchester County, home of Chappaqua, now the home of the Clintons, 66% as you come down there. You move down here, you come into the Bronx. She's getting right now, with 70% counted, 70% of the vote in the Bronx. You come into Queens, 60% of the vote in Queens. In Manhattan, 66%. Again, I love Kings County as the name, but most people call this Brooklyn. She's getting there 60% there in Brooklyn, the base of her national campaign headquarters. And you come out here to Staten Island, she's above 53%. So in urban New York, in all of the boroughs where you have the African-American vote, the Latino vote, the traditional base of the Democratic Party. This has been the demographic lock Clinton has had in this race and that Sanders has been unable to pick. And what the Clinton campaign will argue tonight is, especially if numbers like this hold up, Wolf, not only will they add to their delegate lead, they believe when you project forward again into Pennsylvania, into Maryland, into Delaware, where you do have the African-American base, that she will have a good night tonight, a very good night next week, and that the math becomes pretty impossible.
Stand by for a moment. I want to go over to Jeff Zeleny. He's over in State College, Pennsylvania. That's where Bernie Sanders spoke tonight. I guess they're disappointed. What are their expectations now? What do they hope will be the final result in New York State, Jeff?
No question, Wolf, they are disappointed. They are looking at the margins to see what they in fact will be. They were hoping that this would be a single-digit race. They saw the polls going in, but they were hoping it would be much narrower than this. But no one today in the last several days was expecting victory. Bernie Sanders, as he was talking about this tonight, was talking about that closed primary, was talking about all the voting issues in Brooklyn. But the reality is here, they needed more than a moral victory. They needed a mathematical victory. They're not getting that tonight. So they are assessing the way forward, the path forward. Senator Sanders right now is flying home to Vermont. He'll be meeting with advisors tomorrow. He'll be campaigning back here in Pennsylvania on Thursday. But Wolf, mathematically, this gets so difficult for the Sanders campaign to go forward. Yes, they have money behind them. They have supporters behind them, but the math simply is not behind them. So this is something that the Democratic Party is going to have to wrestle with here. But if you're wondering if Senator Sanders is going to sort of rein in his attacks, that was not the case tonight. He spoke just about a full hour going after Hillary Clinton harder than we've heard him in a long time, Wolf. So this is going to be an interesting moment for the Democratic Party. It is a party divided. Wolf.
Jeff Zeleny is covering the Sanders campaign. John, we're still over here right now, 56% of the vote is in. She's up by almost 20 points right now with 56. Huge win for her in New York State. Play out the delegates in New York and the rest of the country. How does it look for Bernie Sanders?
And before we get to the delegate map, these are very important numbers, that statewide number, if she can keep that kind of percentage up in the congressional district, because the Democratic rules are so generous, to the person who comes in second, that Hillary Clinton not only needs to be above 50% in these districts, she actually needs to be closer to 60% to get, if there's 6 delegates in a district, if you're close to 60%, you get 4 of the 6. If you're around 55%, you split the delegates. So the delegate math could be a little different than the final vote math. But to Jeff Zeleny's point, let's come over now and switch this to the Democratic race. And this is where it just starts to get hard. By our CNN delegate count, that's 229 as we come in. So let's assume that Hillary Clinton comes out with, it could be bigger than this if she keeps those numbers up, but this gives her a net plus of 25 out of New York tonight. So she starts to stretch that out a little bit more. Then the question is, she believes that she's going to have a very strong night next Tuesday. In this scenario, let me stretch it out a little bit. We give Bernie Sanders Rhode Island. The Clinton campaign thinks they can win Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware. And if that happens, well, if you're out into an area now, remember, 225 or so to start the night, 229. They think they can be out in the 280 area by the end of the night tomorrow. And then, if you project this out, if you have a Clinton scenario where Bernie Sanders wins West Virginia, Hillary Clinton thinks she can win out here, Bernie Sanders picks up in the West, and she gets out to California. There is this scenario. These are giving the states at 55-45. I just projected the rest of the contests, giving Clinton some and Sanders some. She gets the big prize of California. But even at 55-45, here's where you get into the question of the Democratic Party. 2383 is the magic number. Will she get there with pledged delegates? Unlikely, unless there is a dramatic change in the math, unless she starts winning states now by big margin, 65-35, she'll, no question, have a lead in pledged delegates. The math for Sanders to catch up because of the proportional rules is almost impossible. But you do think by the end of the race, she'll be somewhere like this and need the superdelegates to put her over the top. And that, of course, will cause controversy in the Democratic Party. But at the moment, as long as she keeps winning, she'll keep those superdelegates. And if she needs them at the convention, she'll have them.
Those are the rules the Democrats set up. 15% of all the delegates at the convention are those super delegates. Let's do a key race alert right now. Take a look at this. On the Republican side, Donald Trump is the winner. Almost half of the vote has now been counted. He's at 61.8%. The Ohio Governor, John Kasich, he's at 24%. Ted Cruz, a distant third, only 14.2% on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, more than half of the vote has now been counted, 57%. Hillary Clinton has a very impressive 59.4% lead over Bernie Sanders with 40%, 40.6%. She's ahead right now by more than almost 200,000 votes for Hillary Clinton right now. Big win for Hillary Clinton in New York. Big win for Donald Trump in New York. Anderson.
We are, of course, waiting to hear from Secretary Clinton. We'll bring you those comments as soon as she starts to make them. Let's turn to our panel, though. Michael Smerconish, I mean, huge night for Donald Trump. Big night, huge night for Hillary Clinton as well. How do you think the race, the tone of it, the tenor, the focus begins to shift now?
So I'm excited to now look forward to a week from tonight because my home state of Pennsylvania, I think, is the big prize of those mid-Atlantic states. And it's a very odd state. And John King made reference to this, Anderson, because 54 of the 71 delegates are uncommitted regardless of the result. 3 per congressional district. You walk into the ballot booth, you don't know really for whom you're voting because there's no indication as to who the delegate will support. So I think for a candidate like Donald Trump, he wants to go into Pennsylvania and win convincingly so that he can say to those 54 when it gets closer to the convention, regardless of where their disposition may lie, I won your state, I won it big. And when you're wondering, how does he make up a shortfall, if there is one, he turns to Pennsylvanians and says, I need you to stick together as a group and put me over the top.
Yeah, and he clearly has mastered a message that works across the board to any number of states. I mean, it's so surprising that he's won Mississippi, New York, and is on track to win all of these states that typically go for moderates. I mean, all of these blue states like New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, those are the states that ensured Mitt Romney would be the nominee and blocked out, insurgent candidates who typically did well in the South. So the fact that he's been able to really, I think, knit together this coalition is really astounding in his message tonight. I mean, it was 8 minutes. It was short.
This is David, I wonder if what you thought of candidate Trump tonight.
Well, we've been seeing this now. I think the new team has had an impact, right? He had a short speech. Usually he can't clear his throat in 8 minutes. His entire speech was 8 minutes long, focused on jobs. Even his hair, is more, I think he has some of that Manafort mousse in his hair now. I think he's really... they've had a real impact on him because he's trying to show that he's not just the outsider, but he can actually be a
Which is a smart
president.
thing at this point in the race. I mean, he's done away with all the 16 or so opponents he once had. He's got 2 left, but if he's ever going to start to kind of project the air of being a president, this is the time.
Yeah, he has to start doing that because this is going to be on the minds of these delegates. And, it is a concern for the Republicans, and all the candidates have the same problem. There's a lot of hostility here among Republicans for the candidates they're not supporting, much less so in the Democratic Party. So he's got to start elevating a little bit here.
But he's also stirred the pot in a kind of a clever way. He's got a fight going on within the Republican National Committee. He's got the chairman fighting with the state party in Florida, for example. And he's also gotten people into thinking that the system is rigged to a degree or unfair to a degree. And, I think that works in Donald Trump's favor,
Well, as we said earlier, that is his hedge against not getting to 1237. He wants to illegitimate any effort to take this nomination away from him.
And tonight, he became the only Republican candidate who has a mathematical possibility, really, of getting to 1237.
And he's involved in this rebranding, right? I mean, tonight he said, you vote and you win. That should be the system. And you imagine that's going to be his message consistently going forward into this convention.
And can I just say one more thing also about the other Republicans, and maybe Amanda can comment on this, but you don't see Cruz now saying, John Kasich needs to get out of this race. Right. That has stopped. Because he needs Kasich to stay in this race.
To try to take every delegate possible.
Exactly, away from Trump.
Cruz would probably prefer a real man-to-man race with Donald Trump. I mean, they would be desperate to have a debate. I mean, look at what Donald Trump did tonight. He really came out and tried his hardest to talk about the issues. He said, we got to stop jobs from going overseas. Well, Ted Cruz should take up that conversation and say, okay, well, here's the best way to do that. Do we really want to bring manufacturing back from Mexico, or do we want to develop new high-tech companies that are just competitive with a lower tax rate? Cruz has a really hard challenge ahead. He has to force the conversation back to issues. I keep thinking of the 3 Ps: principle, personality, and populism. Donald Trump has got the personality. Ted Cruz has got the principle. They both have to figure out how to play the populism.
But I mean, the hardest thing for Ted Cruz doesn't seem to be messaging. It just seems to be math. I mean, the math is not in his favor.
But look at the terrain.
Donald Trump can reach 1237, and even if he doesn't, he can make a strong argument that it can't be taken away from him.
Absolutely, and Ted Cruz is getting desperate, which is why you heard him come out today and say Donald Trump can't even run a lemonade stand. How ironic, saying this of Donald Trump, who has built a $10 billion brand. You know, he's getting desperate. He's getting down into the mud, and he should be worried because look at the polls right now. We're at 50% reporting, and he's almost in single digits. Ted Cruz is in third and almost in single digits.
Let's shift and talk about Hillary Clinton's win tonight and what this means for Bernie Sanders.
Who won the Democratic side?
What this means for Bernie Sanders.
I was talking about Trump. He won a big win.
But as we watch right now, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York is warming up the crowd. We are expecting Hillary Clinton. We're obviously going to bring you her comments live. But, Van, how does the race now shift? What does Bernie Sanders start to do, given the states he's looking at in the days ahead?
This is tough. It's tough for you. The political revolution had that miracle in Michigan. And every time there's a big race coming up, there's just that hope that somehow the polls will be wrong and they'll be able to pull a rabbit out of the hat and show that there really is a path for Bernie Sanders. Tonight, that path gets even tougher. He's got to make a decision now on tone going forward. He's got half of his people saying hashtag tone down for what? She's the establishment and go after her, go after her. You have other people who are saying, hold on a second. If you tarnish her so badly that you created a possibility for her to be defeated, you set the political revolution back more than anything else. So you've got a real challenge now inside the Bernie Sanders camp. I guarantee you tomorrow at the big meeting, that's going to be
one of the questions is how do you manage your own supporters?
Sure.
If you torque them up so high and you have such an edge, can you then turn around and say, but now we have to come together?
Especially tonight, let me just say one thing, especially tonight because the heartburn about Brooklyn, about the fact that 120,000 people were voter disenfranchised, that really is, you look at online, the young people, the Bernie supporters feel like something was stolen from us. Now, whether or not mathematically that would make a difference or not, you've got these things out there. She's got to be able to respond to that heartburn, and he's got to do a better job of keeping it in line.
Anytime a voter is disenfranchised, it's an outrage. 126,000 is the last reporting we've had from CNN, and it makes me want to scream. By the way, the Bernie people ought not pretend that those were their voters. Hillary won Brooklyn, and she won it solidly. This is really is an impressive victory for her. Senator Sanders outspent her $6.6 million to less than $4 million on television. He had these enormous rallies. He did, as David points out, torque up his supporters so much so that one of his supporters called Hillary a Democratic whore. He walked it back, apologized. Bernie, as soon as he heard about it, said that was out of bounds. I get that. But the tone, the bitterness in New York was really troubling. And if Jeff Zeleny, I missed Bernie's speech, but Jeff is there covering it. He says that Bernie tonight was attacking even more aggressively than usual. It is not working for Bernie. This is not working for him. And I went back and looked, when David Axelrod was scorched earthing Hillary Clinton at the end of the 2008 campaign.
That's so harsh.
And I like it that Paul says it with
very gracious.
Kind of crazy smile, too.
On April 22nd of 2008, when Hillary won the Pennsylvania primary, I went and reread her speech. She did not attack Barack Obama. In fact, at one point she said, we are in many ways all on this journey together. A month later, Wolf Blitzer interviews Hillary. I went and looked that interview up. She not only did not attack Obama, she defended him. She defended Barack Obama when John McCain said this horrible thing where he said, Hamas wants Obama to win. Hillary jumped in and said, whoa, wait, no. That's outrageous. That's terrible. And by the way, he'll be very good on Israel, which he has been. So that's the tone that Hillary adopted as a loser when the math was inevitable. She didn't quit, and I don't think Bernie.
Do you see Bernie Sanders doing something like that?
Look, this is tough. The political contest, as much as people are not going to want to hear this, the political contest is essentially over tonight. The character contest begins. This is a character moment for Bernie Sanders. Sanders, the candidate, can lose, but Sanders, the cause, can still win. The political revolution can still win. Reform is still possible, but you've got to be able to begin electing Democrats who are going to follow that revolution. And you're going to watch now over the next couple of weeks key decisions made by Bernie Sanders at a heart level about whether he's going to tone down or not.
Do you agree that the political contest is over? Or is that what you're afraid of?
I think it's been over for a while. I don't think that the math has really changed.
On the Democratic side. There was no hope for a miracle tonight.
Right, the math has been, this has been a topsy-turvy cycle, but the math on the Democratic side has been relatively consistent. What I find most interesting is that there has not been a relationship between the crowd size and the donations and the math. So it seems like regardless of what Bernie wants to do, that crowd is going to want to.
But let me just say this, having been, and Paul can speak to this, you know, it's easy for us to say They ought to come together. We ought to find common ground. These are human beings. Right. Their supporters are human beings. They've been going at it now for quite a while. It's very hard to sort of calm things down. It takes a real conscious effort, and that's what you're talking about, Van. They need to sit down and say, you know what, we better ratchet this back on both sides.
But this was the Bernie Sanders at the beginning of the race, who used to blame us in the media for trying to get him to criticize Hillary Clinton.
Let me say one thing about Secretary Clinton. Huge win.
Yes,
huge win.
Absolutely.
And it puts her in a position, as Axelrod has said before, she's got to find even more a way to be even more magnanimous. I think she's taken a lot and she's punched back some, but I think at this point, those young people out there, it is hard to uncurdle milk. If you sour these young people on the whole process, you hurt not just the party, but the country. This is the first time a lot of these young people have gotten involved in anything. When you say, oh, well, you just want free stuff, as some of her surrogates have done, that's not right. Nobody says the Pentagon just wants free drones or NASA just wants free space shuttles. Everybody pays taxes. People have a right to say where they want those taxes to go. She's got to get her surrogates to stop insulting those young people and really reach out to them and bring them in.
Nobody's calling them whores. I'm sorry. It's Bernie's campaign that really crossed the line.
And the guy apologized within minutes, and Bernie apologized as well.
He said he was talking about the congressional Democrats.
He apologized.
He said he was talking about congressional Democrats, which he was not. I read the context.
Listen, if you and I both know, you cannot hold the candidate for every surrogate. But what I'm going to say to you,
you were just holding Hillary's surrogates accountable for saying that Bernie's supporters want free stuff. I'm just saying fair is fair.
There have been a few things. Remember this New York Times story that broke about a month ago that at one of Obama's fundraisers, high-dollar fundraisers, there was allegedly an allegation that it was time for Bernie to gracefully exit right before he won 8 of the 9 next contests. I think you are exactly right. It's up to Hillary Clinton to be magnanimous because at the end of the day, you've got to legitimize the support he has from young people, from middle-class voters, which Donald Trump might try to peel away in a general election. It's so important.
But I think she needs some help from Bernie here.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
honestly, I think, Bernie Sanders has not run for the presidency before. Hillary Clinton has and lost and knows what it's like. And it's difficult, but I think Bernie Sanders at some point also needs to give a signal to his supporters.
Let's get a quick break in before Secretary Clinton comes out. We're obviously going to bring that to you live. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
Very impressive win for Hillary Clinton tonight. There you see her on the stage with her family. She's getting ready to address a very enthusiastic crowd. The former president is there. Chelsea's there. Mark Mesvinsky, Chelsea's husband, is there. They're all on the stage. An enthusiastic, big victory speech coming up for Hillary Clinton. She has done remarkably well in her adopted home state of New York. She's going to be speaking right now. Jake, this is a big moment for the Clintons.
Yes, that's right, Wolf. And right now we're waiting for Secretary Clinton to take the mic.
Thank you, New York. Thank you all so much. Thank you. You know, today you proved once again there's no place like home. You know, in this campaign, we've won in every region of the country. From the north to the south to the east to the west, but this one's personal. New Yorkers, you've always had my back. And I've always tried to have yours. Today, together, we did it again, and I am deeply, deeply grateful. I want to thank everyone who came out and voted, and to all of you across New York who've known me and worked with me for so long. It is humbling. It's humbling that you'd trust me with the awesome responsibilities that await our next president. And to all the people who supported Senator Sanders, I believe there is much more that unites us than divides us. You know, we started this race not far from here on Roosevelt Island, pledging to build on the progressive tradition that's done so much for America, from Franklin Roosevelt to Barack Obama. And tonight, little less than a year later, the race for the Democratic nomination is in the home stretch and victory is in sight. And I want to say to all of my supporters and all of the voters, you have carried us every step of the way with passion and determination that some critics tried to dismiss. Because of you, this campaign is the only one, Democrat or Republican, to win more than 10 million votes. But I'm going forward because more voices remain to be heard, and tomorrow it's on to Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and beyond. We need you to keep volunteering. I hope you will join the 1.1 million people who've already contributed at HillaryClinton.com. And by the way, most with less than $100, because we have more work to do. Under the bright lights of New York, we have seen that it's not enough to diagnose problems. You have to explain how you'd actually solve the problems. That's what we have to do together for our kids, for each other, for our country. So I want you with me to imagine a tomorrow where no barriers hold you back, and all of our people can share in the promise of America. Imagine a tomorrow where every parent can find a good job and every grandparent can enjoy a secure retirement. Where no child grows up in the shadow of discrimination or under the specter of deportation. Where hard work is honored, families are supported, and communities are strong. A tomorrow where we trust and respect each other despite our differences. Because we're going to make positive differences in people's lives. That is what this is supposed to be about, actually helping people and each other. Now, we all know too many people who are still hurting. I see it everywhere I go. The Great Recession wiped out jobs, homes, and savings, and a lot of Americans haven't yet recovered. But I still believe with all my heart that, as another great Democratic president once said, there's nothing wrong with America that can't be cured by what's right with America. is, after all, what we've always done. It's who we are. America is a problem-solving nation. And in this campaign, we are setting bold, progressive goals backed up by real plans that will improve lives, creating more good jobs that provide dignity and pride in a middle-class life, raising wages and reducing inequality, making sure all our kids get a good education no matter what zip code they live in. Building ladders of opportunity and empowerment so all of our people can go as far as their hard work and talent will take them. Let's revitalize places that have been left out and left behind, from inner cities to coal country to Indian country. And let's put Americans to work rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, including our failing water systems like the one in Flint, Michigan. There are many places across our country where children and families are at risk from the water they drink and the air they breathe. Let's combat climate change and make America the clean energy superpower of the 21st century. Let's take on the challenge of systemic racism. Invest in communities of color. And finally pass comprehensive immigration reform. And once and for all, let's guarantee equal pay for women. And we are going to keep our families safe and our country strong, and we're going to defend our rights. Civil rights, voting rights, workers' rights, women's rights, LGBT rights, and rights for people with disabilities. Those are, after all, New York values, and they are American values. And just as we did in this primary campaign, we need to stand up for them through the general election and every day after that. You know, it's becoming clearer that this may be one of the most consequential elections of our lifetimes. Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are pushing a vision for America that's divisive and frankly dangerous. Returning to trickle-down economics, opposing any increase in the minimum wage, restricting a woman's right to make her own health care decisions, promising to round up millions of immigrants, threatening to ban all Muslims from entering the country, planning to treat American Muslims like criminals. These things go against everything America stands for. And we have a very different vision. It's about lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. So instead of building walls, we're going to break down barriers. And in this campaign, I've seen again our remarkable diversity and determination. This is a state and a country of big-hearted, open-minded, straight-talking, hard-working people. You know, like John, a firefighter from the South Bronx that I met shortly after 9/11 as he searched for survivors at Ground Zero. And like so many others, John got sick from breathing the toxic air. When we met again last week, He gave me a replica of his FDNY badge and thanked me for helping our first responders get the health care they need. We have to keep fighting for John and all of our firefighters and our police officers, our emergency responders, and the construction workers who did so much for us. Or Maxine. Maxine, a 27-year-old single mom from Staten Island who's here tonight. She shared with me how she worked her way out of poverty, graduated from college, thanks in part to the help she got for her child from the Children's Health Insurance Program that we started in the 1990s. Or Mikey from Stuyvesant Town, who spent, is Mikey here? Well, I'll tell you, Mikey spent 6 months in Rikers for a low-level drug offense. And he found out how hard it is for people who've done their time to find jobs when they get out. Mikey managed to start his own ice cream shop. I took a lot of you in reality or through the media there yesterday. I highly recommend it, as you might have seen. I couldn't stop myself from eating it as soon as I got it. By the way, he made a concoction for me called Victory. But Mikey is one of the many reasons why we have to reform our criminal justice system and ban the box so others have a fair chance to succeed. You know, New Yorkers and Americans speak every language, follow every faith, hail from every continent. Our diversity is one of our greatest strengths in the 21st century, not a weakness. As Robert Kennedy, whose Senate seat I was honored to hold, once said, "We are a great country, an unselfish country, and a compassionate country." And no matter what anyone tells you or what you might hear from others running for president, that is still true today. America is great, and we can do great things if we do them together. So please join us. Text JOIN 47246. Go to HillaryClinton.com. Be part of this campaign. I know how important it is that we get the campaign's resources from people just like you who go in and chip in $5, $25. I am grateful to every one of you. And to the volunteers who have worked your hearts out. To the community leaders, members of the state Senate and Assembly, county executives, mayors of cities, large and small, and to the mayor of New York, and our borough presidents and our city council members, and to our governor, our senators, our congressional delegation, and all my friends across this wonderful state of ours, thank you. You know, we're going to go up against some powerful forces that will do, say, and spend whatever it takes to stop us. But remember, it's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get back up. And finally, let me say this, finally. Finally, let me say this. There is a remarkable young woman here tonight. Her name is Erica Smigelski. She lives the truth of what I've been saying every day. Erica's mother, Dawn, was the principal of Sandy Hook Elementary School. And she died trying to protect her children, her students. Erica was devastated, as any family member is. And she couldn't imagine life without her mom. But then she got thinking. She got back up. She'd never been involved in politics before, but she has made it her mission to advocate for common sense gun safety reform. You know, like the mothers of Eric Garner and Trayvon Martin and so many others, Erica has turned her sorrow into a strategy and her mourning into a movement. It isn't easy, but as Erica said the other day, what if everyone who faced tough odds said, it's hard, so I'm going to walk away? That's not the type of world I want to live in. Erica, it's not the type of world we want to live in, and we refuse to live in that. So my friends, that's the spirit that makes this country great. It's how New Yorkers pulled together and rebuilt our city after the worst terrorist attack in our history. It's how Americans worked our way back from the worst economic crisis in our lifetimes. And it is how we're going to break down all the barriers holding us back. The motto of this state is Excelsior, ever upward. So let's go out and win this election and all rise together. Thank you so
Former U.S. Secretary of State and former U.S. Senator from the great state of New York, Hillary Clinton, on a very good night for her. She has, with the numbers coming in right now, at least 57.9% of the vote so far. It was just a few weeks ago Bernie Sanders and his campaign were predicting that they could actually win here in the state in which he was born, but where also Clinton lives and where she represented in the Senate for 8 years. A very, very strong, dominant showing this evening. And Dana Bash, you heard from Hillary Clinton this evening much more of a general election message than we have heard in the past. She talked about bringing in, she didn't mention them specifically, but there was definitely a hand of inclusiveness, of bringing in, uniting the Democratic Party. And she took on Donald Trump and Ted Cruz directly. She invoked the daughter of the principal at Sandy Hook Elementary School as somebody fighting tough odds for a worthwhile cause. It was very much Hillary Clinton, the hopes to be, and presumptive one, I think, has to say after this evening, Democratic nominee, that kind of speech.
Absolutely. Only a very passing, veiled reference to Bernie Sanders at the beginning of the speech, talking about the fact that you can't just, have ideas. You actually have to have plans on how to execute it, and then pivot immediately to not just about Republicans and Donald Trump or Ted Cruz, but about what she will do and would do as the Democratic nominee, and she hopes as president. But aside from just kind of the substance of what she said, is how she said it, Jake. I mean, she clearly has been, she's not wanted this fight on the Democratic side, but it has made her so much better when it comes to her abilities as a candidate. I remember being with her when she was just getting back out into politics after she left the State Department in Iowa, and it was like a completely different person. She is so in command now, and the fact is, she forget about the speech. She is in a very, very strong position. She knows that. Her supporters know that, and that's why she was clearly energized by this crowd and by this decisive win, and she should be taking every bit of credit that she deserves for getting this.
This evening, I think, in some ways, will be seen in retrospect as a turning point, potentially, for the Clinton and Trump campaigns. Nights where they both came out and delivered general election type speeches, very, very dominant showings, each of them with about 55-60% of the vote as of right now. The number is still coming in, but very dominant showings.
Exactly. One major difference that we really see illustrated in the picture that we're looking at right now is that Donald Trump is still not the man of the Republican Party. He is very much the outsider. Look at those pictures. Anybody who knows any familiar political faces in the Democratic Party in New York, they're pretty much all there on the stage with her. And
Governor Cuomo, former New York City Mayor Dinkins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she made a point of talking about the governor, the mayor, the former mayor, the congressional delegations.
Bill de Blasio on the left side of the screen, the current mayor of New York, who was her campaign manager for Senate in 2000.
And not so subtle messages. I got this, guys. The party is coming together behind me. Come along, Bernie Sanders supporters in the future and in the states that have already voted, because we are going to unite and we're going to go forward towards the general election.
Very, very strong evening for former Secretary of State and former U.S. Senator from the great state of New York, Hillary Clinton. Coming up, our exit polls are revealing new details about just how Hillary Clinton won New York so decisively, plus voters' views about a Donald Trump presidency if he's elected. We'll have much more election coverage. We're going to take one quick break. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back. Let's get another key race alert right now. Take a look at this. The New York Republican primary, we projected Donald Trump is the winner, a huge winner in New York. Take a look at this margin right now with 77% of the vote counted. He has 60%, 60.2%. Kasich is in second place with only 25.1%. Ted Cruz, very distant third with 14.7%. Look, he's winning by almost 250,000 votes in New York State, 228,942 votes ahead of John Kasich. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton is way ahead as well. She's almost at 60%, 57.6%. Bernie Sanders, only 42.4%. She's winning right now with 222,000 votes. Interestingly enough, Hillary Clinton is ahead of Bernie Sanders by almost as much as Donald Trump is ahead of John Kasich in New York. 84% of the vote in New York State on the Democratic side has been counted already. Very, very impressive wins for both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Let's go over to John King right now, because a lot of people thought that Hillary Clinton would win. A lot of people didn't think she was going to win by this kind of margin. A lot of people thought that Donald Trump would do exceedingly well, but a lot of people didn't think he was going to win by this kind of impressive margin.
And in both cases, the margins will impact the delegate math, which is what's most important at this stage of a contested contention nomination fight in both parties. This is why Hillary Clinton tonight was saying, in her view, that the Democratic race, in her view, mathematically is over. If you look at the map, you see a lot of Bernie Sanders, but Hillary Clinton winning in the cities, the smaller cities of Rochester and Syracuse, and then winning huge down here in the New York City area. And the bulk of the congressional districts are down here, and the bulk of your Democratic base is down here in the state. Westchester County, the suburbs outside of New York, she now calls home, 67%. Come down, nearly 70% in the Bronx. 60%, 61% in Queens. In Manhattan, 66%. You get the picture. Running up the numbers.
In Long Island as well.
Running them up big, yes. Out in Long Island as well. And at Staten Island, more conservative. Hillary Clinton winning there. And you come out into Long Island as well, and she's winning by less of a margin in Suffolk County, but still 10 points there as well, 91% of the vote. And so everywhere you look, especially in the key Democratic turnout, the base areas, Hillary Clinton winning big, even though that looks impressive for Bernie Sanders when it comes to the delegates tonight. Proportional rules. He'll get a chunk of delegates tonight, but she's going to have a net gain of 25, maybe a little higher than that, depending when we go through the districts down in here, which is what she wants to do. She began the night around 229. She wants to add 25, maybe a little bit more to that, and then she's hoping to have an exclamation point next Tuesday.
Let's take a look at the Republican race. Extremely impressive win. Look at how red that is. That's Donald Trump.
All right, pick your word. Thumping, shellacking, it's a rout. Donald Trump running up the score. And again, he's above 60% here with nearly 80% of the vote in. There is absolutely no doubt Donald Trump will end above 50%. Looks like he's going to be in the ballpark of 60%. So then you say 95 delegates, what is he going to get? If I had to guess right now, I'd say he's going to get about 90. There's a congressional district just here, Albany and to the west, where you see Trump at 48. And then the counties around it, some of the congressional district is in the eastern part of this county. He's at 54. Some of it touches this county. He's at 47. So there's a possibility in this congressional district he's under 50. If you're under 50, the man in second place gets 1 delegate and you get 2. So Kasich could pick up a delegate up here. Vote, we're not done counting, but he could up here. Another congressional district over here anchored by Syracuse, where you see Trump a little bit below there. The district stretches out into some of these other counties, but it's possible. We're not done counting yet, although we're getting close, 99% in the Syracuse area. So it's possible Kasich gets a delegate here. And the other place, Wolf, this, again, overwhelming for Trump when you look at this. A lot of people will say, oh, it's his backyard. If there is one minor bruise on Donald Trump tonight, it is here. With 92% in, you see it, this has been consistent. It's about 500 votes. But John Kasich, right now, winning in the borough of Manhattan, which Donald Trump calls home. There's one congressional district right in here. Kasich conceivably could win that, get 2 to 1 for Donald Trump. And these parts stretch into some of the congressional districts that run out into the other boroughs. We'll have to do the math there. But conceivable, if Kasich holds Manhattan, it's conceivable he picks up 2 for that one district and maybe 1 or 2 more for the other districts. So John Kasich could come out tonight with 3 to 5. Donald Trump gets the rest at the moment, and I don't see any reason it's going to change. A big goose egg.
Ted Cruz winds up with potentially 0 of the 95 delegates in New York State. He winds up with 0.
Which hurts his argument that he says, I'm the candidate who can come into the convention. I should be your choice on a second ballot. If you're getting a goose egg in New York, if he doesn't prove that he can pick up some delegates next week, Ted Cruz's argument takes a hit.
All right, John, thanks very much. Let's go back to Dana and Jake. Jake, a big night for Hillary Clinton, a big night for Donald Trump.
That's right, Wolf. And let's talk with the CNN Politics Executive Editor, Mark Preston, about how they did it. Mark, let's start with Hillary Clinton. Who were the people turning out? What were they looking for?
Well, certainly, Jake. Let's talk about key constituencies right now. Women have been a core group of Hillary Clinton supporters. Let's look at New York Democratic women and see where they broke for. Hillary Clinton, 61% of those went with the former Secretary of State. Bernie Sanders only got 39% of that vote. Let's also talk about the non-white vote as well. Hillary Clinton picked up 67% of that vote. Bernie Sanders only 33%. This is African Americans, Asian Americans, and Latino Americans. Now, let's talk about the quality of a candidate. Hillary Clinton, 90%. Those voters picked up, they believe that she has the right experience. It was a blowout. Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, of course, the former First Lady and the former Senator, took Bernie Sanders to the woodshed on that issue, Jake.
And we already looked at a lot of those numbers for the Republicans, Mark, but one of the things I'm curious about, this has been such a divisive contest. How do Republican voters in New York, in a state where Donald Trump is dominating, how do they feel about a potential President Trump?
Well, Jake, good news and bad news for Donald Trump here. Let's take a look at these numbers right here. New York Republicans, 56% of them said they would vote for Donald Trump. Another 19% said they probably would vote for him. But look at that top number right there. 23% said they would not vote for him. That is a quarter of the electorate. Should Donald Trump win the Republican nomination, as we've been talking all night, he's going to have to try to bring together a fractured Republican Party. But let's go to the next numbers right now. If Donald Trump was elected president, 35% of New York Republicans would be excited, 28% optimistic. Pretty good numbers there. You're looking at about 63% of the electorate. But again, he still has some work to do. 14% are concerned, 22% are scared. That's a little bit more than a third of the New York Republican electorate that certainly have some concerns, some serious concerns in some cases, about Donald Trump as the GOP nominee. Jake?
And that's in a state, Dana Bash, a state that he is winning and dominating in. More than a third of the Republican voters in New York either concerned or scared about the idea of a Trump, of a President Trump.
Yeah, and whenever we see that word scared, and it's even close to 22%, which it has been in some other states, even those that he's won, it's kind of remarkable to see that. I mean, that is a very aggressive, passionate response to somebody who is a potential nominee of your party, especially in a place like New York, where it was a closed primary, meaning only Republicans rather could vote in it. Having said that, it's not just spin. This is a new phase of the campaign, clearly, for Donald Trump. He is going to try clearly very hard to turn those numbers around. And if he continues to do the kind of thing that he did today, give a short, crisp speech, really trying to stay on message, to try to not be as controversial and, frankly, use offensive language and lines as he has before, maybe he'll go a long way in changing those numbers, even in a state where he's clearly dominating.
Although right now the only controversial expression that I'm thinking about is Ted Cruz referring to New York values. Ted Cruz, who is ending this evening the big loser with 0 delegates, the only candidate in both races of the 5 candidates still standing to have 0 delegates out of New York. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, both, of course, the big winners in the Empire State tonight. But exactly how many delegates will they get, and how could that change the race? We're watching these final votes come in. Stay with us.
Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton scoring big and very important victories tonight on their mutual home turf. We're talking about New York State. As Hillary Clinton put it, there's no place like home. Both the Republican and the Democratic frontrunners now poised to claim a big new haul of delegates that would move them even closer to their party's nominations. We're awaiting the final tallies to see exactly how many delegates they will win. We have right now a key race alert. Let's look at where the votes stand right now. Take a look at this on the Republican side first. 83% of the vote is in a huge win for Donald Trump, almost 60% of the vote. John Kasich, the Ohio governor, in a distant second place with 25.2%. Ted Cruz with only 14.99%. You saw the vote tally just changed. 83% of the vote is in. Trump is ahead by 242,000 votes. On the Democratic side, 87% of the vote is in. Hillary Clinton is way ahead right now. She's ahead by almost 223,000 votes, 57.3% to Bernie Sanders, 42.7%. A very, very impressive win for both Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side and Donald Trump on the Republican side. Anderson, good night for both of them.
No doubt about that. Big wins for both. We heard from Hillary Clinton just a short time ago, and Wolf mentioned how she began her opening remarks. Let's play those before we go to the panel.
Today, you proved once again there's no place like home. You know, in this campaign, we've won in every region of the country. From the north to the south, to the east, to the west, but this one's personal.
And let's turn to our panelists. It was interesting to hear both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump both sort of pivoting to a more general election, and also sort of striking, I don't know, for Hillary Clinton, much of a different tone, but certainly for Donald Trump tonight.
I thought it was a different tone for both of them to a degree. You know, Hillary Clinton tonight gave a great general election speech.
Right.
And that's what, you know, she was talking about. America is great. She was
really comparing herself to Donald Trump.
To Donald Trump, making not so veiled references to his proposals on temporary ban on Muslims entering the United States, and on and on and on. And I think with Donald Trump, what we saw tonight was somebody who had a specific message on his issues, very focused, very short, very disciplined. And I think that's clearly the influence of his new team and the new phase of the campaign they're in. And Paul Manafort, who's his new senior advisor, had a press availability with reporters earlier this evening in which he spoke about it. He said, look, Donald Trump has always been disciplined, but this is what you're seeing now is a more disciplined Donald Trump. I mean, and so it's very clear to me that they understand they're in a new phase of this campaign. And Donald Trump refers to it as being presidential. I'm not so sure that's what it is. I think it's just being a more focused candidate.
I want to return to Hillary for a second, because I The thing that struck me was a line almost at the beginning of the speech. We had a little discussion before she came out about the need to try and unify the party, and the first thing she said was, there's more that unites us than divides us. And that's really the posture that she needs to take from here on in. She shouldn't take the bait. She shouldn't return to old debates. She should be focused on moving into the general election and drawing those contrasts with the Republicans that unite Democrats rather than antagonizing the Sanders supporters, who she will need to win a general election.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was interesting to see also was the coalition of voters that got behind Hillary in New York. If you look at the exit polls, this is a state that has a lot more liberal voters than prior states. And of course, who has Hillary been struggling with? With progressive voters. And the fact that she did this here is reassuring for her campaign going forward.
And in fact, we heard in the exit polls, there was a lot of voters who wanted policies, not just supportive of Barack Obama's policies, President Obama's policies, but even more liberal than him.
That's right, and a lot of those folks backed her. I mean, she just, I think, wiped the board with Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders should have done better. I mean, he was really at peak Bernie Sanders in many ways in this state, but he couldn't overcome Hillary Clinton's advantage there. I thought she did sort of give a shot to Bernie Sanders in the beginning when she said, well, listen, you know, she's won all across this country, north, south, east, and west, and we have heard from the Bernie Sanders campaign that she was kind of a regional candidate and that she wouldn't do well outside of there. So you know, I thought this was a very big night for her, and she'll have probably a bigger night going forward.
You know, Bill Press, ever since Iowa, New Hampshire, the question was, can Bernie Sanders broaden the coalition? Can he reach out to African Americans in particular? He has failed to do that. I mean, not that he hasn't reached out, but he's failed to really garner significant support from a wide swath of African Americans. Why do you think that failure is based on?
First, let me just say, look, Hillary Clinton served the people of New York very well as the United States Senator, and I think tonight they returned the favor to her. I mean, it's a huge win for her, a pivotal win for her. I thought her speech was excellent tonight, and I think it's kind of pivotal for both parties. And Bernie Sanders had some disadvantages in New York. You know, as a Sanders supporter, I'm disappointed that he didn't come within that 10 points where I think he really needed to show the strength kind of to move forward. Look, I just say it's awfully hard to overcome that history of the Clintons, particularly with the African Americans and Latinos, and for somebody.
Do you think this is a turning point tonight?
I think it's a turning point tonight. I think you're going to see, first of all, this is not over. I think that the thing continues. Let me tell you, the sweet side of this for me tonight is that the California primary is really going to count like the New York primary counted. And this is going to go through June 7, I think, before we know who's the nominee in either party. Bernie is working on broadening that base, but the
math is not
going to happen.
But the math,
Bill, the California primary is going to happen. That's for sure. Whether it counts, I think, is another matter.
Well, look, I'll give it to John King. I was watching him with the numbers just about 10 minutes ago, right? And if you look at Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Connecticut coming up, we know the states that are coming up, that it's unlikely she's going to have the full. I don't mean to be dumping on Hillary. I'm not. I'm just saying, if you look at the math, everybody talks about the math, it's unlikely she'll have the full number of pledged delegates necessary before the convention. She'll depend on the superdelegates.
But Obama did too,
but she
right?
will be, I mean, just to be clear, she will be way ahead of Bernie Sanders.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this was his big shot
and
tonight.
just to be clear, Barack Obama also needed superdelegates because there have been very few nominees and candidates who actually get to that mark that's needed, and they all need superdelegates to cross over. But let me just. Tonight was a great night for Hillary Clinton. I mean, I think that what we saw as the campaign neared this election day was you saw a candidate smiling, you saw a candidate having fun, whether or not she was talking about having hot sauce in her purse on the Breakfast Club or whether or not she was eating sundaes. She was doing the retail politics necessary to win this race. She actually, I think Dan Merrick was talking about the fact she ran this race like she was running a mayoral race in New York City. And you saw her pounding the pavement, and I think that people need to realize that this hasn't been a coronation for Hillary Clinton. That's one of the things people were talking about. She really had to work hard, and tonight was her night.
You know, we played some of Hillary Clinton. Let's play some of Donald Trump, again, just to hear his tone, the way he presented himself, and talk about that. Let's watch.
We're really, really rocking. We expect we're going to have an amazing number of weeks because these are places and they're in trouble. They're in big trouble. When you look at Pennsylvania, when you look at Indiana, when you look at Maryland and Rhode Island and so many places We have problems everywhere you look. We are going to solve those problems.
Kayleigh, I mean, is that the Donald Trump you want to see more of as a Trump supporter as this race continues?
Absolutely. That is the Donald Trump I want to see. I think that's the Donald Trump we will see. I think we're finally seeing someone who thinks that he's the presumptive nominee, likely is. Tonight he won by 35 percentage points. That's where it currently stands. That's more than any poll basically was predicting. He's comfortable. He's finally at the place where he thinks he's got this sewn up. And this is what a contrast to 2 weeks ago, where we were all sitting here saying this could be a turning point for the Trump campaign. He just lost with Wisconsin. He won dramatically tonight. I think he's comfortable, and I think that's the Donald Trump we'll see going forward.
You also see the impact, and I think it was David Axelrod who said, you see the impact, or maybe Gloria, the team that he has hired. I mean, he has now a bigger team in place. Clearly, they're having a heavier hand in advising him.
No doubt about it. I mean, this is someone who came onto the political scene never having run for anything, never having been a part of a campaign, dominated, took everyone by surprise, and now you're finally seeing this well-oiled machine being led by Paul Manafort, really hammering out how the campaign should be, how the nominee should look as he goes into this presumptive nominee position.
I think it's sort of interesting to see the contrast between Hillary Clinton's speech and Donald Trump's speech. I mean, it looks like Donald Trump came out there as a rookie, sort of struggling with the assignment, trying to be very good, hit the issues, whereas Hillary Clinton is a seasoned professional. It's like the Bad News Bears versus the New York Yankees. She knows what she's doing. She's laying the groundwork to go after, look, the first beginning of her speech unified the Democratic Party behind her, gave homage to Barack Obama, to Bernie Sanders, and pivoted to the Republicans, and then laid groundwork for the issues that she wants to talk about in a general election.
I will point out,
it was
as
masterful.
a
Donald
huge
Trump
Bad News Bears fan, as a kid, they did win.
Yeah,
That's why I laughed, because it was scary.
Hillary Clinton, what we saw in Hillary Clinton tonight was a typical politician, and there is such when I watched the Democrat debate, I saw such a passion gap. I saw Bernie Sanders, who was passionate and organic and real, and I saw Hillary Clinton, who had the same poll-tested, focus group-tested lines. Donald Trump is passionate. He took the political scene by the storm. Hillary Clinton has the poll-tested lines that she gave perfectly tonight, but that's not what America's looking for. I think it's an outsider's election that will translate in the general election.
We will get that opportunity, and I think the country is really looking forward to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump on the same stage.
Yeah.
But I think you have to give Donald Trump a little bit more credit than we are, because Donald Trump won tonight in New York and didn't spend any money on the airways. I mean, Donald Trump literally ran a race for President of the United States and didn't spend any money on the airways and won by 35 points. I don't know what that's a testament to, but it definitely shows that Donald Trump has found something. He's found a vein in this country. He's found a vein in the Republican Party. And I think that Hillary Clinton may be the last thing standing between Donald Trump and being president.
It is also interesting, just as we watch more votes come in, each at 90% right now. Hillary Clinton with 57.5% of the vote, Donald Trump with 60.2% of the vote. And they're both about 200, Donald Trump's, 264,000 votes ahead of his nearest competitor. Hillary Clinton's 244,000.
They're huge victories. Huge victories. And by the way, Ted Cruz may get naggled in New York because there's a 20% threshold to get any delegates and so Cruz will likely come out of this with nothing.
Yeah, that's really one of the big questions coming out of tonight is how does Cruz rebound? I mean, we're heading into five states next week, which Trump will probably run the table in those 5 states. Perhaps Cruz can do well in Maryland and Pennsylvania, well, meaning get some delegates, but he's probably not going to win those states. And they're putting the focus increasingly in Indiana, May 3rd.
You can't underestimate the role of, I mean, the mistake Ted Cruz made criticizing New York values. I mean, clearly one of the values of New York is pride in the state of New York.
That goes down as the worst political line. We need to bury that line.
It's interesting, in terms of pivotal, how much the narrative has changed, even among ourselves. For the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about, man, Cruz has got such a great operation, and he's in there getting all those delegates, and Trump is really fading, and it looks like the Trump thing is bad. He tonight, Donald Trump, is back on track and back on top.
Well, both can be true, Bill. I mean, Donald Trump plays a great outside game, and he did very well tonight. Ted Cruz plays a very good inside game, and he's grabbing delegates behind
not tonight.
the scenes.
Not
because
tonight.
the whole goal, but this was the outside game. It's working behind the scenes at these caucuses, in these states, in these processes, and he's very, very good at that. And the question is, can he take enough away to stop Donald Trump from reaching the magic?
Isn't it ironic that Ted Cruz loves to use the phrase delegates of the people, when in fact, tonight, when the people spoke, and these truly are delegates of the people, he will likely walk away with zero. He wins delegates of the party insiders. He wins delegates of the state apparatus. He quite clearly doesn't win delegates of the people.
Well, if you look at
not
in New
he doesn't
York,
wear delegates of the people where there are delicatessens, is what it turns out.
if you look at the states coming up, these are really good states for Donald Trump. And you mentioned, Manu, you mentioned Indiana. Indiana on May 3rd is going to be a key state. And tonight, Paul Manafort actually came out and said that if Ted Cruz doesn't win Indiana, he should drop out of
And that's one of the reasons why Ted Cruz is actually putting together a ground game to actually sort of mirror what they did in Iowa. I think they view that as sort of the firewall, perhaps another chance to rebuild the campaign.
It's going to be
and in other states. I mean, they feel like maybe they'll do well in California. I mean, it's a very, narrow path. They have to pick up delegates here and there. But listen, I mean, you've got to give Trump credit. I mean, the fact that he did so well, first of all, in the South, let alone New York, I mean, really just gave him, the kind of momentum that has been hard for Cruz to stop and anyone to stop.
Can I say something that's back to the Democratic race that is going to be, I'll probably get blasted for being politically incorrect, but I mean this completely sincerely. Bernie Sanders, I think, has been remarkable in his stamina. You're talking about a guy who's 74 years old, and he has been relentless in this campaign. And in this New York campaign, he flies off to Rome, and he comes back and spends the rest of the day campaigning
and
in
maybe
New
like
York.
an hour speech tonight. I mean, he's speaks for long periods of time.
It's been really an impressive
and he campaigned
display.
in New
What's
York like he
politically
hadn't
incorrect
campaigned.
about that?
I mean, he campaigned in New York.
Well, I mean...
what do you...
It's sort of ageist or something.
Why don't we take a break on that? 1 week from,
Thanks, Anderson.
1 week from tonight, another Super Tuesday with 5 contests in the Northeast. Question, of course, will Trump and Clinton be able to repeat their New York victories, the campaign, the momentum going forward? Much more after this break.
Very exciting night in New York State. Let's get a key race alert right now. Take a look at the Republican side. 90% of the vote has now been counted in New York. Donald Trump, the big winner. He's got more than 60% of the vote. That's a lot more than a lot of the polls had suggested. He's winning by almost, look at this, 272,000 votes over John Kasich, who's in second place. Ted Cruz, a very, very distant third place. 95 delegates at stake. Donald Trump could wind up winning almost all of them. We'll get an update in a moment. In New York, on the Democratic side, similarly for Hillary Clinton, she's almost at 60%, 57.5%. To Bernie Sanders, 42.5%. She's winning now by almost 250,000 votes. 90% of the vote has been counted in New York. Big night for her as well. But let's look ahead. A week from today, there's going to be 5 contests, including a very big contest, John, in Pennsylvania. Lots of delegates at stake there.
Although the interesting part for the Republicans, Wolf, and as you look at the Donald Trump victory tonight, I want you to focus on New York just as we pull out the map and just take a look. He won in this part of the country. He's winning in this part of the country. So it is safe to assume, and the current polling suggests, that this is Donald Trump country right now. The interesting part is 17 of the delegates you win next Tuesday night, 54 already committed to be unbound, to go to the Republican convention unbound. But what you want to be if you're Donald Trump, and you might need some of those non-committed or unbound delegates, is to win and win by a big margin so that then you go back and make the political
Historically,
argument.
does Pennsylvania usually go with the front runner?
Well, Pennsylvania, it never matters. It's the problem. When we get to this part of the campaign, if you want to go back and look at 2012, you see what happens. The race is over. You go to 2008, the race is over. That's what this campaign is so unusual, especially on the Republican side. And so the point is, for Trump, he wants to go in and then win big so that his campaign can circle back to those uncommitted delegates and say, hey, follow the will of the voters of Pennsylvania. So here's the question tonight. Kasich will pick up 3, maybe a handful of delegates in New York. Ted Cruz, who's in second place, is going to get shut out in New York. Now the question for the Cruz...
Third place for Ted Cruz.
For Cruz, I'm sorry. He's going to get shut out in New York for delegates. So the question for Ted Cruz is, can he find a way to at least start cherry-picking some delegates to make the case that I'm still amassing? So we're going to watch. I'm going to show you the congressional districts inside Pennsylvania. All the red are Republican congressional districts. Can the Cruz campaign get back to what it has done in other states with good efficiency, targeting of voters and pickups of congressional delegations and congressional districts? Remember, John Kasich from Ohio, which he won, was born out here in western Pennsylvania. He wants to do the same thing. But when you look at this, Only 17 delegates get allocated to somebody next Tuesday. Trump wants a big win. And then the next biggest prize is right here in our neighborhood in the state of Maryland. Again, there's a Republican district out here in the western part of the state. A Democrat represents it now, but traditionally a Republican district. They redrew the lines, comes down into here. Republican district out here on the eastern shore. Can Ted Cruz target and start picking up delegates, or does Donald Trump run the board? He's going to get 90 tonight, maybe 91. Can he get 75 or 80% of the delegates next week? If he does that, he's in his math to get to 1237 gets better. Still hard, but better.
Yep, big night for Donald Trump. Let's go over to Jake and Dana. Jake, you guys are there in New York, the home state of Donald Trump, the adopted home state of Hillary Clinton. Huge wins for both.
That's right. And the last time there was a New Yorker versus New Yorker general election was, I believe, 1944, FDR and Governor Thomas Dewey. One of the things, Dana, that's interesting about this race for 1,237 delegates on the Republican side and 2,838 on the Democratic side is we call it a magic number, but it's really just a majority. Mark Preston, the executive editor of CNN Politics. How are the candidates doing with the New York results? How many delegates are they going to take away from this state?
Well, Jake, let's talk about the Republicans first. We talk about the big win for Donald Trump in New York, 95 delegates at stake. Let's look at these numbers right here. He has picked up 79 delegates as we speak right now. John Kasich picks up 2, and as John King was just saying earlier, it appears that Ted Cruz is going to be shut out. But year to date right now, Donald Trump has 837 delegates. Ted Cruz at 553, John Kasich at 147 delegates. You know, interestingly enough, Jake, this is the first delegate win for John Kasich since he won Ohio back on March 15th. The magic number is 1237. Look at those numbers. Donald Trump is 400 away. Let's look at Democrats quickly right now. Right now, Hillary Clinton has picked up 109 pledged delegates. Bernie Sanders has won 70 tonight. But let's look at the year-to-date number. Very important right now. 1,900 for Hillary Clinton as we speak at this moment. But how is that broken down? She has won 1,413 pledged delegates, 487 superdelegates. On the other side, Bernie Sanders, you see, has 1,185 total delegates. 1,145 are pledged, 40 are superdelegates. Let's just break those apart for a moment. Hillary Clinton has a 268 pledged delegate lead over Bernie Sanders. However, it is the superdelegates that are really helping her with expanding that lead right now. 447 more superdelegates than Bernie Sanders. She needs to get to the magic number of 2,383. Jake?
All right, Mark. And of course, the superdelegates are always controversial when we raise them because they are not necessarily committed. They do change their minds, as we saw in 2008. There were many superdelegates committed to Hillary Clinton. Then Barack Obama started winning races and they started changing their sides. But they are also, according to the Democratic National Committee rules, part of the equation.
They are very much so. And on the Republican side, just looking at the numbers, actually seeing them in black and white, I think that if Donald Trump does get the nomination before the convention, which, as we've said many times tonight, is possible, we're going to look back on tonight and say this was the turning point that let that happen, not just because of the obvious, the raw numbers. If it looks like he is going to get, maybe around 90 delegates, which is almost all the delegates here, but because of the momentum that it starts. And you cannot underestimate what is going to happen 1 week from tonight, Jake, which is other states where he is poised to do incredibly well, which will keep that momentum going, keep the narrative changed, and keep things looking much better for Donald Trump.
Indeed, Donald Trump has some other states coming his way that in which he should do very well. As the Republican race heads towards a possible contested convention, there was a party meeting in Florida that became very important, and it was rather contentious. Will that meeting change what happens at the convention in Cleveland? We're going to go there and get a live report just ahead. Stay with us.
All right, let's get the latest key race alert. Take a look at this right now on the Republican side. 93% of the vote is now in. Donald Trump maintaining a huge lead over John Kasich and Ted Cruz. He's at 60.1%. Kasich, a distant second, very distant second, 25.1%. Ted Cruz way down in third place, only 14.7%. Look at this. Trump is ahead of Kasich by almost 275,000 votes. A very, very impressive win. He's going to wind up with almost all of those 95 Republican delegates. In New York, on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton also a very impressive win for her tonight. 90% of the vote is in. She's got 57.6%. Bernie Sanders only 42.4%. She's ahead by almost a quarter of a million votes over there as well. A big night for both of them. The road to the GOP convention now is still complex. By no means a done deal, but it's a very important night tonight for Donald Trump.
Very important night because Donald Trump is going to pick up 90 roughly. That's our ballpark estimate. Could be 91, could be 89, but we think it's around 90 of the delegates tonight, and Ted Cruz picking up 0. So that's a net gain of Donald Trump over second place Ted Cruz of 90 delegates, maybe 1 or 2 more. Why does that matter? Well, here's the 3/4 mark, 1237 to clinch. Donald Trump is almost 75% there. So, Wolf, let's assume all the polls are right and Donald Trump wins them all next week, sweeps the contest next week, sweeps them with 75 or 80% of the delegate take. Then he's out past the 75% mark. He's past 950. So let's project this forward. We're going to go through the end of June. In this scenario, we give Trump New Jersey and West Virginia. Cruz has Indiana. We can change that in a second if you're having a debate about that, but let's give it to Ted Cruz. Cruz continues to win out in the West as he has done, and then you have the state of California. We could get to California with a scenario roughly like this. Trump close to 1,100, 1086 in this scenario. In this scenario, if he wins 70%, 172 delegates at stake, big state of California. If Trump won 70% of those, it's by no means assured. Cruz is going to compete in the state. Maybe Kasich is still active in the race. But if Trump can get his campaign in gear, you can see a scenario where, let's say he won, instead of 70%, he won 65%. This gets him to 1206. This gets him to 1206 right here, right? So suppose actually this momentum carries through to Indiana, and Trump can take that as well, right? Now we've got him up to 1217. Can he get a few more delegates out of this area? Can he compete maybe out in either Washington or Oregon and change the math there? So there are ways. We're giving you scenarios, but it's not hard to get Donald Trump to 1175 or 1215, and it's not inconceivable to get Donald Trump up into the 1220s, even possibly to 1237. But that's the scenario Republicans are now looking at. Unless Cruz starts to perform in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, which he has not done, the likelihood is that Donald Trump is going to either get to 1237 or get to 1175 or more, and that starts a very interesting conversation.
Certainly does, and we're going to have more on that in a second. I want to check in with CNN's Phil Mattingly. He's down in Hollywood, Florida, just outside of Miami. The Republican National Committee, some of the leaders have been meeting. They're making some decisions, Phil, that could potentially be very significant. What are you learning?
Well, Wolf, for the Trump campaign, obviously a huge night. Donald Trump heading to Indiana tomorrow. But for his team, the focus is right here. The entire upper echelon of his newly expanded operation heading here to meet with Republican leaders on Thursday. And there's two main reasons, according to people I've spoken to, Wolf, why they're doing just that. First is they want to try and convince the 168 Republican National Committee members that they really have turned a corner. This is a campaign that is very real and could reach that magic 1237 number before the convention. But the other issue, the one that's probably far more important, is they're sending two of their top lawyers down here to talk about the specifics of the rules that may guide this convention. They want to know what these 168 members are planning and how that might play out when they get to Cleveland. And there's a good reason, Wolf. Behind the scenes, in the last 2 weeks, members of the Republican National Committee have been fighting over different proposals. And these proposals could open up the convention to more power for each delegate or more power for the one convening the actual convention. Wolf, there are a lot of issues to dig through here in the Trump campaign, keeping a very close eye on what happens here in Florida.
Phil Mattingly in Hollywood, Florida for us. Thanks very much. We've got some experts, Republican Party experts who can help us better appreciate what's going on. Mike Shields is with us. He's a CNN delegate analyst, former chief of staff of the Republican National Committee. Michael Toner is with us as well, CNN delegate analyst, former FEC chair, former counsel for the Republican National Committee. John King is with us as well. I guess the bottom line question, if Trump gets that close, doesn't get to the magic number of 1237, but is almost there, is there any conceivable way he would be denied that Republican nomination?
Well, sure. The delegates are going to vote at the convention, and you have to have a majority. You have to have a majority to win the rules fights. You have to have a majority to win the nomination fight. If you don't get to 1237 in the delegates, you're going to have votes at the convention. You have to get there. Now, there are enough unbound delegates that he could, if he gets close enough, that he could win over the unbound delegates. But he's trying to win over those unbound delegates to get to a majority. You have to have a majority of the delegates to get the nomination.
So even if he's that close, Michael, that close, only a few votes shy, a few delegates shy, there still could be a contested convention.
I think you're absolutely right. Mike makes a very important point. 1237 is the magic number, but there is a pool of about 100 unbound delegates who will decide in Cleveland who they're ultimately going to support. People forget, in 1976, Gerald Ford won the nomination over Ronald Reagan, relying on a pool of unbound delegates. So as Mike points out, the key is going to be, if Trump is short of the 1237 figure, how short is he, and how does that compare to the 100 unbound delegate pool?
Because if he's almost there, John, just a few delegates shy, but he's got 2 or 3 million more votes, popular votes, than any of the other Republican candidates. How's that going to fly if he's denied that nomination?
Well, that's the political argument, though, that Mike and Michael are laying out, that we usually think it ends on June 7th. Well, it won't end on June 7th. If Donald Trump is 1175 or 1195 or 1202, then we're going to have, let's say there are, 150 unbound delegates. You're going to have 150 competitions. Donald Trump's going to be calling those delegates. He's going to be trying to sway them. His campaign's going to be meeting with them. Ted Cruz is going to be meeting with them. So what we will have is mini elections between June 7th and the convention to see how many of these people Donald Trump can win over. I think that's the fascinating part if he gets close. Now, if he wins 54 in Pennsylvania, am I right? 54 unbound delegates next week in Pennsylvania. If Donald Trump wins by a large margin, he will go to them and say, they have a moral obligation to vote for him. But then we're into the great unknown. I mean, that's where we're going.
He keeps saying that the system is rigged. You've heard him say that repeatedly in recent days. There's going to be a meeting of the Rules Committee a week before the Republican convention in Cleveland. They could make some critically important decisions there, couldn't they?
Well, yes and no. All they can do is make recommendations that are then forwarded to the Delegate Rules Committee. They can't make any changes this week in Florida. So first of all, that's a big misunderstanding, I think. Secondly, to say it's rigged, the other side of that would be, okay, well, let's just change it so you don't need a majority anymore and rig it for another candidate. Then you're going to have a whole other group of people, the Cruz supporters, the grassroots people in the party would be outraged at that. So, the idea that it's rigged, I think people's position on the rules are really directly related to where they are in the campaign. If Trump gets to 1237, he's suddenly going to love the rules, and he's going to defend them and say we shouldn't touch a thing. So some of that's politics. Some of that is appealing to people's sort of moral compass on what should we do if someone's close, more than it's really attacking the rule system, I think.
Yeah, Michael, one of the Trump advisors said today that the Cruz campaign, quote, was stealing, lying, and bribing people to become delegates. You're a former counsel for the RNC. You worked at the FEC. How do you investigate that kind of allegation?
Well, this is like two-dimensional chess, Wolf. The first level chessboard is what we're talking about tonight. Who wins these states? Who has a lead among bound delegates? The second level of the chessboard is electing the actual delegates who are going to go to Cleveland. And that takes a real grassroots political effort. And that's where Ted Cruz so far has excelled. Although, in fairness, Donald Trump now has a chance to catch up in that process and do much better. The FEC does not have jurisdiction over those kinds of issues. That's grassroots politics.
Yeah, well, in New York, I think he will do very well. The state party is actually going to select the delegates. And so I think a smashing victory like this tonight for Donald Trump is going to be hard for the state party, but Ted Cruz will be on the ground. Donald Trump does have 32 county chairmen. He has a ground game in New York, another place he hasn't had that. So it'll be very interesting to see how they duke it out in New York for these delegates.
As the rules from the last convention, if they're carried over to this convention, and that's what the Trump people want, Rule 40B enacted to stop Ron Paul essentially at the last convention, and under that, only Ted Cruz, it looks like, and Donald Trump would be eligible to be placed into nomination. But if we're at ballot 4 or ballot 5, and neither Trump nor Cruz have done it, and Reince Priebus, the chairman, right now saying we're not going to change the rules, we're not going to play with the rules, there'll be no mischief. But at that point, how would a delegate on the floor could move to suspend the rules if you wanted to put Kasich or Paul Ryan or anybody, put you, Mike, into nomination?
Well, you gave the reason for the Kasich candidacy right there. I mean, if you have enough delegates to block each other out, eventually you're going to have another name placed into nomination because neither of the two frontrunners can win, and that's when you get to that scenario.
That's why Kasich presumably is still in this contest, even though he has not necessarily done all that well so far. All right, guys, stand by. The Clinton campaign says the nomination is in sight right now. They're calling Bernie Sanders destructive. We have details. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the New York primaries. Comments being made by the Clinton campaign about the Sanders campaign and the path forward are making some headlines tonight. Let's go to Breonna Keeler, who's standing by with that. What are the campaign saying?
Yeah, Anderson, pretty startling words coming from Hillary Clinton's communications director, certainly eyebrow-raising. She said, just talking to reporters a short time ago, that Senator Sanders and his campaign have been destructive. Destructive, that was the word that she used. And she basically said that the rhetoric that we have heard from Sanders and his campaign is not productive for the party and for the country. So clearly warning Bernie Sanders not to be a spoiler, as the Clinton campaign is really portraying the Democratic nomination all but wrapped up for Hillary Clinton. Victory is in sight. We heard her say that tonight, and that is what we keep hearing as a refrain from her top aides.
All right, Breonna Keeler. Breonna, thanks very much. David Axelrod, what do you make of
I
this?
call that
What?
snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
I mean, Hillary Clinton had a great night. She gave a speech that was laden with language about unity. So why go out and do this? You know what this reminds me of? A week ago, after the Wisconsin primary, Jeff Zeleny reported on the air here that the Clinton people said they were going to disqualify and destroy Bernie Sanders in New York, and that's what touched off a series of events that cascaded out of control. I just don't understand what the strategic thinking is behind this.
It's a confusing message, right? I mean, Hillary Clinton is out there being magnanimous, and her campaign is calling Bernie Sanders, saying he's engaged in character attacks and that he's destructive and that it's
Maybe they didn't
bad
hear
for
her
the
speech.
Democratic
But I think one of the interesting things that happened after they sort of floated that idea that they were going to try to disqualify Bernie Sanders is they sort of baited him into being, he made those speeches, right? After that happened, saying that Hillary Clinton was unqualified, and he had some bad, kind of days after that happened. So it could be,
Bill Press,
could be that.
Sanders supporter, what do you make of it?
Well, look, I just have to agree with David and Gloria. This is really unfortunate to take this tone, particularly tonight. I mean, this is a celebratory tonight for the Clinton campaign. A disappointed night for the Sanders campaign, but he's gone back to Vermont to regroup and then move forward. So, I mean, for this kind of tone, I think is really, really unnecessary, unfortunate, and I don't think it reflects Hillary Clinton. I don't think it reflects Bernie Sanders either.
I think that, and Van Jones said it earlier, I think that we now have to realize that politically, I think this race is over. I think that politically we see that the pathway has been narrowed so much after tonight. Bernie Sanders, this wasn't something that he wanted to win. This was something that he had to win. And now what Hillary Clinton did in her speech by saying that, there is more that unifies us than divides us, she was extending that olive branch. But we're talking about these comments that were made, but we also have to understand that Bernie Sanders' campaign, they too it's an onus on them as well. I think both campaigns have to take that onus upon them to come together. And I think that Bernie Sanders' campaign as well. We can talk about all the issues we want to talk about, but the character attacks, the judgment attacks, all of those things
Bill,
have to...
do you think the onus, there is at least part onus on the Sanders campaign?
Well, I think there's an onus, what I hear Bakari saying is there's an onus on both of them to stick to the issues.
Exactly.
They're going to move forward, but stick to the issues and keep it positive, and also start focusing on Donald Trump.
But the Sanders campaign isn't saying that it's disruptive or destructive rhetoric. They're saying we're sticking to the issues. So clearly the Clinton campaign doesn't believe it's just sticking to the issues.
Well, there was something said earlier by, I think the response destructive, but was in response to something that Jeff Weaver said earlier this evening on MSNBC, that if Hillary Clinton had all the delegates necessary to secure the nomination, that they would still continue to try to get the nomination away from her. Jeff Weaver said that. I would disagree with that strategy. I don't think it's going to happen.
Let's take a quick break now that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have won New York. What are the odds they actually face in their bids to win the White House? We're getting new numbers from political odds makers. That after the break.
Now that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have scored big wins in New York State, let's see how the political odds maker are handicapping the presidential race. They now give Donald Trump a 69% chance of winning the Republican nomination. That's up 5 points in the last 24 hours. There's no change in the odds for Ted Cruz. He's given a 30% chance of winning the Republican nomination. Who will actually win the White House? Political odds makers now give Hillary Clinton a 75% chance of victory. That's up to an all-time high for her. Donald Trump is holding steady. He's given a 15% chance of being elected president. Of course, these numbers keep changing as the race moves forward. Go to CNN.com/predict to check out the pivot political prediction market. Coming up, new insight into Donald Trump's strategy in the battle for delegates, with a contested convention potentially looming, and Bernie Sanders vowing to fight on even after his loss in New York. Our correspondents are getting new information. Stay with us.